bright lights of Hollywood for Canberra in a bid to get more local shows on streaming giant Netflix. Actors Simon Baker, Brian Brown, Marta Dusseldorp and Justine Clark joined producers and senior screen industry representatives at Parliament House today. The group wants the federal government to stamp a 20% local content guarantee into law for streaming sites like Netflix and Stan. It would mean 20% of a streaming service's Australian revenue would go towards local content. US film productions have descended on Australia during the coronavirus pandemic due to the nation's success with the health crisis. A maternity unit at a Western Sydney hospital is again under fire after the death of another newborn baby. 6 newborns have died unexpectedly at Blacktown Hospital in the past 2 years. In a statement, a spokesperson for the hospital said staff follow a rigorous process to ensure they identify, investigate and learn from incidents which occur. The hospital launched an internal inquiry after the death of the 5th baby in November last year. A financial researcher says a gender imbalance in the professional art industry is concerning. Dr. Marina Gertzberg from Monash University has led an international study which found less than 4% of art sold in auctions belongs to women, while the majority of art sold is created by men. Dr. Gertzberg says despite the report, art made by women tends to sell for more money.
Although we see that very few artworks by female artists are sold at auction, when they are sold, we observe that they're actually sold at higher prices than comparable artworks by male artists. And that suggests that buyers actually like female artworks.
The study also looked at the distribution of artworks made by women within galleries, finding women tend to turn to galleries more than selling works through art dealers. Turning to sport, and in cricket, Test opener Marcus Harris has made an unbeaten century, but rain is once again ruining Victoria's Sheffield Shield clash with Queensland in Brisbane. Harris reached triple figures either side of 2 rain delays as Victoria reached 7 for 219 at tea.
National Radio News is supported by the Community Broadcasting Foundation, cbf.org.au.
This is Night Shift. The following program may contain coarse language. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Carter's Corner. I'm your host, Travis Carter here, and we've got a very, very special show for you, everyone, today. We've got some massive guests again. We're doing a bit of a wrap-up for the WA state election. We've got I don't know if I can call him former Member of Parliament or current Member of Parliament. I'm not exactly sure when the switchover is, but we've also got the guest of the hour, a very, very important person from the ABC. So I'll introduce him in a moment. We've got him on the line right now, but what we need to do first is do a quick disclaimer about the show, and when we come back, we will have the one, the only, Antony Green, all the way from the ABC with us in the studio. So we'll be right back after these quick disclaimer.
Opinions expressed on Carter's Corner are entirely independent of the opinions of Radio 89.7 FM's wise board, talented management and wonderful sponsors. Carter's Corner respects the right of each individual to hold and express an opinion unfettered by the shackles of political correctness and without fear of quivering in the quicksand of cancel culture. Radio is for entertainment, not censorship.
All right, Travis here again, and on the line, all the way from over east, we have the one, the only, and the superstar of political analysis, Antony Green. Are you still there with us, Antony?
Yes, I'm still here.
Fantastic. Thanks for sticking around through all those messages and everything. So, first of all, so our viewers know who you are, I don't think you really need much of an introduction. You are pretty much the person to go to for everything to do with political analysis, guesstimation on who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to lose their seat. How long have you been in the industry of, well, political analysis?
Well, I describe it more as election analysis because I don't do much day-to-day politics. I mainly deal with the process of elections, the numbers of elections, how the modelling works, how you call an election. I've been doing it for 30 years. My first election was back in 1989. Since in that time, designed the ABC's computer system, designed the way the website works. So I've done a lot of work on that sort of information, and we've just been through the process of rebuilding the election system, actually. But, it's been an interesting career, and it's always a good fun and a good challenge. I call it bungee jumping for intellectuals election night, because you just, jump off into the void tethered by an electronic feed of votes from the Electoral Commission. So it's an entertaining industry.
I was glued to the election, and I was watching, we were actually at the Nationals after party watching the call, and the bit that got us surprised, and the reason we actually reached out to you, is very early in the piece. According to, I think it was Perth Now that published it first, it only took 42 minutes for you to, and with all your systems and everything, to be able to predict who was going to win. Like, most people already had a guess, but 42 minutes, and I think it was 0.7% of the vote was actually counted. For a lot of people out there, they don't think it passed the pub test to call it so fast, and we did ask you about it. So explain to the people out there, how were you able to make a declaration, well, not, I don't know if you declaration, but a call that the Labor had won. I think there was Labor had won one seat and the Nationals had won one seat at that stage.
Well, it's a matter of, what the simple thing, arithmetic was that Labor, to lose government, Labor needed an 8% swing against it. Now, our computer system, we build in all the results from last time by polling place. So when we get the results from the Electoral Commission by polling place, we're able to compare apples with apples. So we're able to compare this polling place this time with last time. So, and we had a reasonable number from a smattering of different electorates. And every polling place was producing the same result, the same sort of swing. And it was showing a swing of 10 to 12 and more percent towards Labor. Now, we know that wasn't an artifice, that was a real swing. And it was like 12% to Labor when they needed an 8% swing against the lose. There's no way that swing is going to turn around at that stage. If Labor needed 10% to win government and you had 11% swing, you wouldn't call. There's margin for error there, can still play a part. In a case like that, where the swing is completely in the opposite direction it needs to go in for Labor to be in trouble, you can be confident you've got a real swing and you can call the election. So, it was just sort of removing the uncertainty about who was going to win. From that point on, it was just a matter of working out the detail of how many seats Labor gained, because it was clearly going to be a big win for them, and so it proved to be.
Let's be honest here, it was an absolute slaughtering, and my understanding is Liberals have actually lost their major party status as well. So you were talking then about how you can predict how many seats, what sort of percentage of a swing they need forward and against. So they would have needed, after that initial count, a 20% swing the other way of what the early indications were. In your 30 years of doing this, have you ever seen a swing that great halfway through a count?
No. The point is voting patterns are stable. From election to election, from polling place to polling place, you tend to see the same swing. It sort of clusters around an average. It's distributed around the average, but that's the way it tends to be. There is always a correlation between the result this time and the result last time. And the correlation, the difference is the swing. And so if you operate on the swing, you're able to, and the swing, to be honest, the variation in swing from polling place to polling place is smaller than the variation in the two-party preferred result. Okay. So if you operate on the swing, you can very quickly work out what's going on, and then predict from that what the outcome of the election will be. Now, the closer the election, the longer you've got to wait. This wasn't going to be a close election, so it was possible to call it early. All the elections I've called very early have been elections where it was very clear.
Yep. So I have to admit, once again, you've absolutely nailed this right. So one of the big questions that we had before is looking at the last federal election, where a lot of the polling pre-election was going the other way. So the last federal election, everyone was polling that Labor's going to win. But on that one, again, Liberals did win. And I think from memory, it took about 4.5 hours for you to declare that Liberal was going to win that seat. So what was the biggest difference between the WA state election that you noticed versus the last federal election?
Well, size of swing and closeness. The expectation on Saturday was that Labor was going to win big, and that's exactly what the results showed. The last federal election, all the polls were showing a swing against the government and that Labor would get maybe 51, 52%. Every opinion poll said that. On election night, we were getting results coming in, and by 7:30, the swing, that wasn't what the result was saying. I remember saying at about 7:30, it's mentioned in lots of books, I said, we're seeing that result of 51 to 52, but it's the opposite way around to what the opinion polls were. So the results themselves revealed a different picture from what the polls say. You always have to try and blank your mind on election night and just read the data. By 7:30, it was clear that the results were not looking like the opinion polls. It was a bit complicated because the swing was different from state to state. But that was the difference. And the difficulty was at that point, it was clear at that point that the government was slightly ahead, but were they going to turn that into seats? That took time to work out. And it was about 9:30, we came to the conclusion that Labor couldn't get into government. It was not yet clear at that stage that the Morrison government would have a majority, but it was clear they're going to be the biggest party and would be back in office. And in the end, it was the Monday before the seat that gave them the majority became clear. I mean, they only have a 3-seat majority. Okay. So, and that's why, the closer the election, the more you have to wait. Also in that case, there was doubt whether there would be a swing against the government in Western Australia. I remember saying on the night at 8 o'clock, if the Labor Party needs to gain seats in Western Australia to form government, and within an hour it was clear they weren't gaining seats in Western Australia. And once that was clear, it was then a matter of just saying Labor can't form government. So it's always a matter of looking at the numbers you're getting out of the system. And as I said, the closer the election, the longer you have to wait.
Okay, so we do have a request line here for people who do, if they want to ask you questions, they can send the text messages through to us. So for the people out there listening, you can send your messages through on 0418 897 897. Also, we do have the producer here keeping an eye on the Facebook and the YouTube streams. So this does get streamed out to the World Wide Web. So if you do have any questions, make sure we get them through. This is a massive opportunity because it's not often we actually get someone of your caliber, Antony, to come through and talk about these things. So we have had one question through. You've kind of answered it. So the question that's come through is, how does this differ to when he called the Libs winning for the federal election? So from your answer, is it pretty much just the swing was so much closer during the federal election than this election, or were there other things that made it a lot harder to call for that one?
Well, the overall result for the last federal election was about a 1.2% swing to the government. So it was a small swing towards the government. On election night, we also get data at different stages. We get first preference votes, and then later for each polling place, we get a preference count. So initially, we operate off an estimate of the first preferences, estimate the preferences, and then later on, we get the preference count, and we substitute that. So we've got different layers and quality of data. You also, as I said, the results from polling place to polling place and electorate to electorate cluster around the overall swing. So if you're seeing a bit of a difference from one state to another, it's a bit hard to work it out. The biggest difference is from state to state. You might get a different swing in Victoria versus Queensland, or it might be, in the end, it was bigger in Queensland. One thing that was difficult to work out in Queensland at the last federal election was that the coalition vote, primary vote, didn't move. So the Labor primary vote collapsed, and there was a surge in third-party votes. And then you were trying to figure out what was the preferential swing afterwards from that. And that made it rather complex to work it out. And that collapse in Queensland was different from the figures in New South Wales and Victoria, who were all in the same time zone at the time. So it's a closer election. The prediction you were making was the government's going to get back, but it's a very narrow majority, and you didn't have any West Australian figures. So you clearly have to wait longer, get more figures. The 2016 election, which was a narrower victory for the coalition, where it was unclear quite late. We didn't call the result that night at all because it was unclear. It was too close to call. Every time we've got a prediction, we've got a plus or minus error margin on the number of seats based on how many seats remain in doubt. But you can compare that with the 2010 federal election where there weren't many, where you got a hung parliament, but there actually weren't many seats in doubt at the end of the night. So every election is a little bit different, but it's always easier, as we saw in Western Australia, it's easier to call a landslide. The hardest elections to call are the ones where there's no swing, because you're looking for something happening and you can't see anything happening because nothing's happening. And the last two federal elections have been a little like that because the swing was quite small.
Okay, so we do have a guest from a question from one of our presenters here at the station. So his name's Bass Tadros. He's actually the candidate for the Health Australia Party in the agriculture region. So I'm not sure if you know this or not, that apparently their count is very, very close at the moment for him picking up the final seat. So the question here says, where are we? What is his chances at this stage? So I don't know if you've broken the figures down that far yet, but what do you think? Do you think Bass has a genuine chance of getting the final seat?
At the moment, I don't think so. He goes out too early. I'm just having a look. On the ABC website, we have these calculators that do the distribution of preferences for each of the regions using the lodged tickets. Now, the lodged tickets all favour Bass, but at the moment, it looks like he just doesn't get enough votes. And the preferences have all got to flow his way, and they won't all flow his way because some people will vote below the line and those preferences will drift. So I'm not convinced, at this stage, I'm not convinced he's going to get elected. But to be honest, I think there's only, in agricultural region, there's only 53% counted, so there's a lot more voting to come. And also the below-the-line votes haven't been entered. But I don't think below-the-line votes will help him getting elected.
Okay, fantastic. So we do need to go to a quick message from our sponsors here. But you raise a very good point about the people who do vote below the line. So that's something that we've really been pushing on this show. So people's preferences are their own. So if they trust the party, vote above the line. If you want to control your preference yourself, to vote below the line. So what I'd like to do is chuck you on hold for about a minute, go to a message from our sponsors, and then come back and talk about how much of an impact voting below the line has on your ability to predict elections. So you're still happy to stick around for a little bit longer, Anthony?
Yep.
Fantastic. We'll be right back after this. So we are on Carter's Corner with Travis Carter, and all the way from the ABC, we have Antony Green. So we'll be right back shortly.
Hey, how's the water tasting at your place? Could it do with a healthy refresh? Our station sponsor, West Oz Water Filters, has the answer for you. Healthy families and communities have been their priority for over 20 years. They listen to your water filtration needs and will recommend a system to solve your home or caravan problem. A proud family WA business, West Oz Water Filters is here for you. To find out more, simply search West Oz Water Filters and make an appointment today.
Are you busy planning the entertainment for your next function? Maybe it's a wedding, a corporate event, or even a party. Then you need to talk to station sponsor Off The Wall Promotions. Off The Wall can provide DJ and MC services, live music and photo booths. They can even live stream your event to anywhere in the world. Operating from Yanchep to Mandurah, Off The Wall Promotions is your total entertainment specialist. Simply search the socials for Off The Wall Promotions or check out their website.
Australia's only top 20 urban radio countdown. Chart.com. You ready? Here we go.
Tune in Thursday nights from 6 p.m. right here on 897 FM.
All right, we're back again. Carter's Corner here. We have Antony Green from the ABC here with us live on the phone calls. So we've been discussing how he was able to predict the election only 42 minutes in, and with 0.7% of the total count counted, which is a phenomenal effort. And before we went to those quick messages, we were talking about voting under the line. So, Antony, with your systems and everything that you've got in place, how much of a issue, or does it cause any problems with you if there's a lot of people who do vote below the line?
Well, I would hope they do, because the thing that annoys me about the calculator, the group voting ticket system, is that I can write a calculator that can predict someone gets elected from a very low vote. And I think that's the wrong way for an electoral system to work. Electoral systems should be based on voters making up their own mind over preferences. And at the moment, the group voting ticket system tends to operate on the basis of people doing deals, taking control over the preferences, and, as I like to say, send preferences off on a magical mystery tour across the ballot paper. The new Senate system, where people have control over their preferences, not the parties, is a much better system. Now, a lot of people don't vote below. The problem in Western Australia is you've got two options. You have to number every square below the line and make no errors, or you vote single one above the line and the party takes your preferences. Now, the whole system herds people into going above the line. The new Senate system, which is similar to the one used now in Western Australia, in South Australia and New South Wales, you can vote above the line for parties with preferences or below the line for candidates with preferences. And most people don't really know who the candidates are. They know who their parties are. The parties are. And so they can vote above the line for the parties if they don't want to rearrange the candidates. But if a voter wants to, say, put the Labor ticket in a different order or the Green ticket in a different order or the National ticket in a different order, they can vote below the line. And in a federal election, they only have to do 12 numbers. They don't have to number every square. So it's a much fairer system where people can pick and choose their own candidates or pick or choose their own parties. I think the group voting ticket system used in Western Australia just takes all the power away from the voters and puts it in the hands of people who arrange preference deals. Now, in terms of does below the lines affect the result, not very much. There aren't enough of them. But what it can do is it can undo some of the preference deals because people are supposed to reach a certain point and gather preferences. Below the line votes tend to wander off the ticket as preferences and they prevent some of the preference deals from actually coming to fruition.
Okay, interesting. So from your perspective, especially for what you do you think that the government should be starting to look at adopting a universal voting system for all states and territories, mimicked around the federal side of things? Or do you like the fact that you do have the options to keep it, each state has the option to do it how they choose to do it?
Well, I mean, New South Wales, for instance, uses optional preferential voting. Tasmania and the ACT use the Hare-Clark electoral system. They all have subtle differences in various things of the rules. Most of the rules are the same. They share common role arrangements. The electoral systems are mostly similar. I think the current ballot paper used in the Senate and the Upperhouse was designed in the early 80s for the Senate and then copied across the country. They also copied group voting tickets, but as I said, that's come under being undone slowly around the states. The problem with I think one of the biggest problems is the size of the ballot paper and the number of candidates. If you've got particularly if you've got full preferential voting and group voting tickets, people don't have a preference for everybody. So if you have to number every square for all these people you don't know, most people give up and they just vote above the line. That's exactly what the problem is with the current Senate system. And the group voting has led to more and more candidates being on the ballot paper. In New South Wales at the last 2016 Senate election, there were 50 columns and 150 candidates. It's ridiculous. People haven't got that many preferences. And I think it's optional preferential voting that's been coming in with these Senate reforms means that more parties are not contesting every state. There's no point standing if you're not going to get any votes and you've got no chance of getting elected. So we've seen a slight decline in the number of parties nominating as group voting tickets have disappeared. But the surge in parties was because of group voting tickets, and it become like a lottery where everyone was joining in, swapping preferences even if they didn't agree with each other, just on the chance that one of them would get elected. And I don't think that's a good electoral system. So, look, in the end, I think Western Australia's got to look at several aspects of its upper house electoral system after this election, and Labor's got a majority, it will do so. I think there are several things wrong. One is this group voting ticket issue. The second is they elect even numbers in each region, which means it's very difficult for one party to get a majority of seats in a region. And if your party gets 50% of the vote, you should have a reasonable chance of getting 50% of the seats. In the current system, Labor's got to 60% of the vote before it gets a chance to have a majority. So I think they should move to an odd numbers of members, which is the standard way of doing this proportional system in Australia. And the third thing that will be looked at is the rural bias in the system in Western Australia. There is a 3-to-1 bias against Perth in the current system. Now, should they go to 1 vote, 1 value? I mean, the Premier's indicated he doesn't necessarily think that. But I think the current system is going to be replaced by something. I think it's just a matter of how much rural bias remains in the system. As it stands at the moment, since the current system was introduced in 1989, back in 89, Southwest region and mining and pastoral and agricultural regions, the weight of the voters in all three regions was the same. A vote in mining and pastoral and agriculture is now worth about 2.5 times the weight of a vote in Southwest region. Southwest region is moving towards the weight of a Perth vote. But the other two regions, which have about 10% of the electorate, now elect 33% of the Legislative Council. Now, there may be an argument for rural overrepresentation, but does it have to be at the rate of 6 or 7 to 1? Would a lower ratio be more efficient?
Yep. I know there will be a lot of people out there at the moment pulling their hair out going, oh, what about the country? What about the country? Everything will be like policy-based. Everything will be city-based, and all the country who's doing it really, really hard at the moment will suffer. If they do go to a city-focused voting system, like you said, so pulling some of the weight of the votes in the rural areas, do you think the politicians will still pay attention to what's happening in the rural areas?
Well, the first thing I'll say is when this system was adopted, the weighting was 3 to 1 between the remote regions and Perth. It's now 6 and 7 to 1, and will continue to grow at that rate. As the system that was adopted in 89 of rural weightage has now blown out. So do you just continue to let it blow out like that, or do you rein it back and go back to one of the older regions? Look, I mean, it is a serious problem, but I mean, if you're not going to have 1 vote, 1 value, you have to come up with a measure of what you do. And the argument that you need over rural overrepresentation, you've got to come up with a measure of what you should adopt. In 1986, there were 20 Upperhouse seats outside of Perth and 10 within Perth. Now, it's equal now. So these weights have varied over time. Given that the weights have varied so much since the current system was adopted in 1989, maybe it's time to have that debate. Maybe it's time to go back to what the previous 3 to 1 ratio was.
Yeah, I was going to say, could another way, because they're constantly moving the boundaries for the metro areas, could possibly bringing the boundaries in, so some of the metro seats are also in the southwest and the agricultural regions, could that be a way to balance it a little bit more as well?
Well, the metropolitan region has been fixed since 1989. It's a fixed boundary. No electorate has crossed the metropolitan boundary since then. What they did change was adopt 1 vote, 1 value in 2008. And that resulted in 8 electorates moving out of the regions and into Perth. And so now it's effectively 1 vote, 1 value, except for mining and pastoral has got a weighting just for the size of the electorate. So Northwest Central has only half of the enrolment of most other electorates, for instance. So there's a formula for that. At the moment in the Legislative Council, the regions are defined by land use. So agricultural region covers the areas of agricultural use. Mining and pastoral covers the mining and pastoral regions. It's a fixed region. It doesn't matter what the population is, it gets 6 members. And that's one of the problems of the system, is that those regions have no population growth, but they continue to have more and more power in the Legislative Council as proportion, because their population shrinks, even though their representation stays the same. And so and as I said, the problem is, if you live in 2J or Northern, your vote's worth 3 times the vote of someone in Perth and 2.5 times in Albany. And Albany's further away from Perth than 2J and Northern. So there's a lot of, I think this is the starting point of the debate. There will be a lot of opposition to trying 1 vote, 1 value in the upper house. But I think that the current regions just aren't working, are causing difficulties. And it's time probably to have a look at them. And I think the discussion has to be engaging, because the Labor Party has the numbers to do what it likes. So if someone wants to do something else, they have to put up a good argument for it.
Okay, so you did touch on another very, very interesting point there, because Labor will have a total control of both the lower house and the upper house, so they can make any changes they choose. What's a way that the Australian people can not so much counter this, but make sure that they act in the West Australian people's best interest, rather than just doing what they want and what their power brokers want?
Well, I mean, the key thing to make sure is that once every 4 years you have elections and you can vote them up. I mean, and I think in Australia there's still general commitment to that everybody has the right to vote, that, all the standard procedures of elections take place. No one's going to get their votes removed. So when that 4-year cycle will continue. But the difficulty is, I think, I get this all the time. Some people didn't like the Morrison governor after 6 months and were calling for the Governor-Generals to intervene and stuff. We elect governments as representatives to govern. We elect them because we trust them. Mm-hmm. If they ruin that trust, you get to vote them out of the next election. That's the key thing. And I always say that, a good example I use is that after the Second World War, Churchill was voted out of office in Britain in one of the biggest landslides in British history, which amazed everybody. In the middle of the Potsdam Conference, Britain changed Prime Minister. Churchill was replaced by Attlee. Stalin, who was at the conference, it just confirmed everything he thought was wrong with democracy. And you just compare that Britain has managed to get change. Democracy allows change. Some people say, well, dictatorship's more efficient and stuff, but you can't change anything. You get stuck with it. Democracy allows change. It's not always efficient. It's not always pretty. People don't always like the outcome, but it's important that the government has some legitimacy. The government's got a lot of legitimacy here. If it acts against the interests of the state, if it acts against what it's promised, it destroys itself. Just remember, say, Judy Gillard, when she made the decision on the carbon tax, she said the exact opposite before the election. When Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, his first budget went against quite a number of promises they'd made at the previous election. If you go against your promise, people distrust you, and you pay a price in politics. You pay a price at the next election. So that's always something worth remembering. We're not about to decide. Australia is one of the oldest democracies in the Western world. All Australians all white males have had the right vote since the 1850s. It was a broader franchise than anywhere else in the world. Women had the vote by the end of the 19th century. Indigenous people were delayed in this country, which we always get marked down against. But in terms of a broad electorate, it was broader here. All Australian men in the trenches of the First World War had voted for the government that sent them there. Many of the British troops in the trenches did not have the right to vote in Britain. There wasn't universal male franchise till after the First World War in Britain. And that's something that's often forgotten. Women didn't get the vote till 1929 in Britain. We're a very old democracy and very strong democracy. So, we're not about to start seeing revolutions. And once again, every 4 years, we get the chance to vote them out.
Okay, awesome. We have had a few questions coming through. I think you might have hit a few no's with a few people. WA is now a benevolent dictatorship. Democracy is out the window. With the Labor having the full control of both upper house and lower house, do you think it will turn into a full dictatorship, or is there enough media pressure on Labor to keep them true and honest?
Not media pressure. Law pressure. I mean, the government can't breach its constitution, can't break its own laws. It can change the law, but I mean, it's not. We're not about to get rid of elections and stuff. I mean, people use the word dictatorship in a really crazy way. Everyone still has the right to vote here. There will be an election in 4 years. Some would argue that what we do in the Western world is elective dictatorship. We elect a government for 4 years. Now, in this country with upper houses, it's not often that a government controls both houses. This is an unusual situation, but it doesn't strike me that they're about to start sort of abusing that position. And as I said, in 4 years' time, people will have the right to vote again. Some people like to go for the American system where you have lots and lots of referendums and government has to approve everything, get everything approved by referendums, and you can have citizens' initiative referendums. We've never had that system. That system of referendums is a very American thing. And what you get there in America is a system of direct democracy. We have a system of representative democracy. We elect people as representatives and they make the decision. In the American system, there's a lot more where it's direct democracy, where the public makes the decision with referendums, but that's not the system we have.
Okay, so we do need to go to another set of messages shortly. So I do want to ask you one more question before we go those messages. You've been phenomenal, and you've been a great guest in answering all the questions. You're not sugarcoating anything, which is fantastic. So we do actually have Bass in the studio here today with us as we speak. Did you want to stick around for a bit longer and actually have a chat? I know Bass is chomping out the bit to ask you some questions as well. How do you feel about sticking around for a little bit longer? Because I know originally we only said 20 minutes. All right, fantastic. We'll go to a quick message, and I do want to ask you, so have a think about while the messages are playing, if there's been rumours that the federal election may be called as early as between August and November, do you think, with your calculation and everything, do you think with the result from WA, will the Liberal Party lose if they call an early election? So think about it, and when we come back after these messages, we'll be back with Antony Green from the ABC and Travis Carter from Carter's Corner. We'll be right back after this.
It's a goal! When the unexpected leaves you shattered, reach out to Master Glazier Campbell at Woodvale Glass, your station sponsor. Campbell has plenty of points on the board, being in the business for over 45 years. So don't wait. Phone 0432 543 316 for all your glass, mirror, security screen, wardrobe and shower screen needs. Or check out woodvaleglass.com.au.
Are you a small business owner looking for growth within the City of Stirling? Then why not consider becoming a member of the Stirling Business Association? The professional team can assist you in all aspects of your business. To find out more, simply search Stirling Business Association, station sponsor.
Concerned that a friend or family member is using alcohol or drugs? Don't worry in silence. Call 1300 85 8584. Drug Info is a confidential, free service, providing non-judgmental information and advice to help you help someone you care about. Call 1300 85 8584.
Drug Info is brought to you by the Alcohol and Drug Foundation.
Okay, Joe. Thanks.
Carter's Corner. Travis Carter here. We've got Antony Green on the phone from the ABC, and we've just walked into the studio. We actually have the other man of the hour, Bass Tadros from the Health Australia Party. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Just get your volume sorted. All right, so Antony, the question we were asking before the break, and we had a few technical issues, so I checked the song on as well. If the federal government do call an early election at the moment, there was rumours that it could be anywhere between August to November this year they were going to call the federal election. Do you think the results from WA will cause them to get absolutely smashed at the next election, or what do you think would have happened if they did go ahead with that?
Well, the election's due between August this year and May next year, so it's early-ish, but it's within the normal time. I mean, you can't have a half-Senate election before August, and that's why that's the earliest time for an election. The House can have an election any time it likes. The Senate Senate elections have to be within a 12-month period. Look, I think the main problem with WA, I mean, I don't think these results mean that they're going to get smashed in Western Australia or anywhere else. The main problem is we've seen popular Labor state governments elected in Queensland last October, now in Western Australia, in both cases with an increased majority. The coalition holds 34 of the 46 seats in those two states. So, a clear, more than 20-seat majority in those two states alone, but they've only got a 3-seat majority overall. So, in other words, without Queensland and Western Australia, if they start to lose seats in those two states, the coalition needs to win seats in Victoria and New South Wales and South Australia, and there aren't a lot of seats to gain, but they've got a lot of seats to lose in Queensland and Western Australia. I mean, Queensland is historically at a high point for the coalition. Western Australia hasn't shifted for a long while. The main problem for the coalition in Western Australia is with so few state members. State members employ staff who are, people who work for the Liberal Party work for them. There's going to be very few Liberals able to get on the payroll now in Western Australia for quite a while. And that'll hurt the Liberal Party when they come to the federal election. They'll have to rely more on volunteer workers than people who've on some sort of paid job. So I think that sort of thing, and lack of donors, dominance of the Premier, there's a whole bunch of reasons that make it a bit tough. But it depends on the issues of the federal election. I mean, clearly the Labor Party's policy agenda at the last election didn't appeal to Western Australians, didn't appeal to Queenslanders. I mean, if they don't have that policy in the next election, then those policies in the next election, then the Labor Party has a better chance of picking up seats in those two states. So I don't think anyone should assume the next election is going to see the government defeated or lost. There's still a lot of time for this election to be held, a lot of issues to be fought over, and a lot of positions to be made by both sides. And to be honest, I mean, we don't know how the economy in 6 months' time, what will happen when JobKeeper finishes, will the vaccine work? There's a whole bunch of things that could go wrong between now and the end of the year.
Okay. Fantastic. So do you think, you touched on another point there as well, the COVID and the funding from the government for the COVID response. How much of an impact do you think, I don't know if this is your area of expertise or not, but how much of an impact do you think all that extra advertising for COVID that the government got from the federal government, do you think that was partially responsible for such a massive swing in the favour of Labor?
No, I think the swing in Western Australia is down largely to history. Western Australians are the state that see themselves apart from Australia more than any other state. It's got a long history of having, as premiers tend to say in Western Australia, it's the only state that was ever part of New South Wales. There's a series of grudges that people in Western Australia have against the other states. And I like to say that Mr. McGowan managed to do something John Forrest couldn't do in the 1890s, shut the border. And in the mythology of Western Australia, if it hadn't been for all those eastern state miners flooding in the 1890s, Western Australia might not have joined Australia. So there's a lot of resentment against the eastern states and eastern states' attitude amongst Western Australians. And Mark McGowan really tapped into that sort of view that Western Australians have. I mean, for Mark McGowan to tell the Prime Minister and the Premier of New South Wales where to go really tapped into the mood of Western Australians, and by closing the border, he allowed people to carry on with a reasonably normal life. I mean, just compare it to what happened in Melbourne last year, and you can see why people mark up the reaction to the Premier. So there's a collection of issues which are specific about Western Australia and about the last year's politics potentially also about the weakness of the state Liberal Party, organisationally, that led to this result. And you can't just translate them into federal politics. I always say in Western Australia and Queensland, voters in those states are most likely to see a difference between state Labor and what we call Canberra Labor. Running against Canberra isn't something that works necessarily with New South Wales or Tasmanian or Victorian or South Australian voters. But running against Canberra works well in Western Australia and Queensland.
Okay. We definitely have a fan of yours on here. When you were talking about closing the borders, they sent through a message, yes, we do indeed, and a lot of laughing. So you definitely have you've got a few fans over here in WA, Anthony. So this has been absolutely one of my most enjoyable interviews and probably the most informative I've ever had. So Bass is in here. He did want to have a bit of a chat with you as well.
It was just a quick follow-on question from Travis's question before about the federal government, and I think ScoMo's he hasn't stopped trying to take credit for Labor's win by saying that it was their funding that caused Labor to rise.
Oh, but the federal government, well, I'm not sure you can take credit for that. The federal government, the fact the federal government has funded JobKeeper increases in the job seeker allowance and that has allowed the economy to continue to go, even in the states where they closed the border. I mean, the Queensland border, Western Australia relies less on tourism than Queensland, but Queensland is a tourism state. And they shut the borders to the rest of the country and cut, damaged parts of their tourism industry. It was kept going by federal government money. So you can understand why the federal government, to some extent, is the source of revenue. We saw some of the same stuff a year ago with the bushfires in Victoria and New South Wales. The states had to fight the fires. The Commonwealth couldn't fight the fire. The federal government could provide troops in the aftermath for rebuilding, and they could fund grants and welfare. The Commonwealth has money, states have powers, and that's why the states have become more important over the last year. The Commonwealth can't impose a lockdown. It has no power to. The Commonwealth can't shut businesses on health grounds. It doesn't have the power to. The states do, and that's why the states did it. That's why we had the National Cabinet. They had to try and coordinate the different levels of government who've got different powers. It's the strongest. And just compare what happened here within America, where Donald Trump tended to pick fights with the states and wouldn't help them coordinate. In this country, the states and the Commonwealth cooperated, and we had a far better outcome in terms of public health. We were able to close the borders much more easily, which is always an assistance we have. But certainly the coordination of testing, of all sorts of actions, speaks well of how our democracy works. I mean, in the end, we want our government to work. And last year, I think levels of trust in the government went up for the first time in years, according to opinion polls.
So we're getting quite a bit of chatter come through, and it's really good points about the federal government assisting the lower government. We had a lot more assistance in WA, in Australia as a whole, not just in WA, but Victoria and Queensland and stuff like that. One of the questions that have come through here now, because we were talking about extra money, extra funding, a lot of that extra funding went to the media. And I used to watch a lot of Channel 7 until Jeff Parry decided to have a bit of a stab at me. So one of the things I haven't been able to get away since the whole COVID-19 lockdowns, the regulations, the restrictions, all that have come in. Every time I turned on Channel 7, there was always something good about Labor. There was always something we saw
praising their efforts.
Yeah. So there seems to be a massive. I'm not sure about over east so much, but definitely over here in WA, there seems to be a massive bias from channels such as Channel 7, ABC. I'm not so sure. I'm sorry, but I don't watch a lot of ABC.
Even 6PR radio.
6PR is shocking.
Yeah, they don't give much time or air to any of the minor parties, for example.
So have you noticed that as well? Do you think that's something that would also have a lot of an impact? Not so much having the extra money directly, but the way that extra money is spent. Do you think that's had an impact on it?
Not in terms of advertising. I don't think the advertising government get much credit for that. A lot of it is information. I mean, people always remember the Unchain Your Heart ads during the GFC. Well, you have to get the information out there. I think the most remarkable thing I've seen in the last 3 years is the sheer volume of ads by Clive Palmer that have kept a significant number of newspapers and radio stations viable. Anyone paying for a double page in colour spread in the Australian is paying a lot of money. So that's the one I notice more than anything else.
Well, he's definitely done a few of those ads in the West Australian as well.
You couldn't get away from him during the federal election. It was just absolutely... Even like my kids watch YouTube Kids, and it's just like we were sitting in the middle of watching like My Little Pony and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden there's a Clive Palmer ad, and I'm thinking, why on earth would there be a Clive Palmer ad in a kids' TV show?
Maybe we should ask Anthony, what do you think the qualm is between McGowan and Clive Palmer?
The what? The qualm?
Yeah, what's their, I guess, their hang-up there?
Well, Clive Palmer was threatening to sue the state government. I think that's what it came down to. I mean, look, I don't know. Sort of, there's a lot of people in the Labor Party do not like Clive Palmer over his actions in the last federal election. So that's life. I mean, he had no impact on the Western Australian election.
Right. I mean, look, he's one of very few people that are not allowed to come across the state, but there are many other people that come here and leave as they please. I'm just wondering why him in particular.
Well, he could come over now. He just couldn't come over in the first half of last year.
Right.
I couldn't have come over in the first half of last year either.
Yeah, a lot of it is Clive was trying to come over for the hydroxychloroquine that he ordered.
Right.
So the government said he had
it landed here, did it?
No, I think it landed over there, but he was trying to bring it across and promote it. So he didn't want to have to do 2 weeks in quarantine. So he said, no, you're not coming in unless you do the quarantine. So this is where...
Well, that was the rule for everyone.
Yeah, fair enough.
So... That's if you look at the Australian Constitution, it says like the travel between the states should be free, but yet he wasn't allowed to come in. So
It's not just him.
Yeah, no, it's everyone.
Him.
Yeah, I agree that, but I have been critical of the Labor government because rather than locking the borders, it should have been because you should be allowed to travel between the borders. But if you do cross the border, even during a pandemic, it's straight into quarantine for 2 weeks. And so I think that should have been implemented instead of a full lockdown, because with a full lockdown, you break in the Australian Constitution. So I don't think that side of things was handled very well by the Labor government. Again, resources available, not sure. Again, we're not privy to the decision.
The High Court eventually ruled it didn't breach the Constitution.
And I personally think the judge who made that ruling should be investigated because the Constitution, Section 92, is black and white.
Right.
Like,
the High Court interprets the Constitution.
Yeah, I don't know how it says travel is unrestricted and free.
We always had tick gates at the border, so we've always had health measures.
Yeah. So, but if someone was sick, they were still allowed in, but they had to go straight into quarantine. They were still allowed across the borders. So, yeah. No, anyway, moving on. Bass, any other questions for Anthony for today?
Really glad to have you on the show, Anthony. I think you've been very gracious, and we've really enjoyed having the conversations with you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Anthony, you have been an absolute legend, and I have to say, I never expected you to say yes to come onto the show. So again, we may have a few different opinions, but this is what this radio show is about. It's about giving people the opportunity to express their opinions. And Anthony, you've been phenomenal. So again, thank you very much for coming onto the show. When the federal election comes around and they finally call it, I'd love to get you back on again.
I might be a bit busy.
You'll definitely be busy. So whether it's before the election or after the election, it's you're always welcome on the show. You've been absolutely phenomenal. So thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you.
No worries. So this has been Carter's Corner. You've got Travis Carter here. We've got Bass Tadros as well. So we're going to go to a quick message from our sponsors. Now, let me just check the systems. Just bear with me for a moment while I put this into the correct order. Boom. And we are going to go to a message, and then we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So Carter's Corner, Travis Carter, thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you soon.
If you're not happy with your current property manager, then check out Exceed Real Estate. Exceed's experienced team are reliable, authentic, and will take responsibility for your investment property as if it was their own. They'll soothe all your investment stress. Find out why station sponsor Exceed Real Estate are the leaders in property management right across the metro area. For more information, simply go to exceedre.com.au. That's Exceed with an X. Life is better with Exceed.
From sunset cinema screenings to carnival rides, local markets and more, City of Wanneroo's new look event season is heading to a suburb near you this summer. Visit wanneroo.wa.gov.au/event season to find out what's on near you.
You're listening to People Powered Radio, proudly supported by the Community Broadcasting Foundation. The Community Broadcasting Foundation resources community-owned and operated media stations just like this one that connect people and tell vital, local stories so that we all enjoy a more vibrant, inclusive Australian culture and healthy democracy. Find out more about our work at cbf.com.au.
Rock the Dial every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. as Alan takes you on a musical journey covering some epic tracks from the 60s to the current era. There are the A and B side vinyls, your classic hits from movie soundtracks, feature artists and the top 40 charts from yesteryear. Get ready to drown your strawberry for your champagne breakfast. Sunday Sounds with Alan, only on 89.7 FM and streaming on 89.7fm.com.au. We are here in the studio again. Travis Carter, Carter's Corner. We just had Antony Green from the ABC, and I have to say that was awesome. So a massive, massive shout out to Antony Green for coming onto the show. It's it's awesome. It's great to see someone of such influence actually having the courage to come onto the show. So that's brilliant. Now, we still have with us, we've got Bass Tadros from the Health Australia Party.
Hello.
And we have another special guest for the first time in the studio on the yellow mic. We have Emily Wallis.
She's the State Secretary for Health Australia Party.
So, in summary, she's your boss.
She's one of many of my bosses. My biggest boss is my wife. We don't actually operate in that kind of hierarchy. But Emily is amazing, and she is actually the main reason and inspiration behind me joining the party. I first learnt about Health Australia Party when I met Emily in a similar interview to this one for Community TV with Emily and Teddy Crace, who's our WA president for Health Australia Party.
Fantastic.
And when I learnt about the values, that's what got me passionate and excited about Health Australia Party.
Well, if you do win a seat, and that's what we're going to be talking about
Then
today,
I'll be there, boss.
it's your fault for getting him to run.
He's one of our best candidates. Well, they're all good. They're all fantastic candidates. I'm so proud of all of them.
We're very lucky to have them.
We're very lucky. We've got the best. And look, most of them don't go into politics. They're not going into politics to just to be in politics. They're going in there because they genuinely believe they need to make a change.
Yeah, it's not out of personal interest or the fact that they're career politicians. It's from a place of we want to see a change in the world. We may as well be the change that we want to see in the world.
Oh, definitely.
And look, we still have a chance, even though the man of the hour, Antony Green, which I'm glad we actually had him on the show, he's been doing what he's been doing for 30 years, as he said, and he's very experienced and obviously very good at what he does. Well, I think one of his earlier articles was we've got a chance at 0.2% or something like this, and now he's a little bit backing out of that, but we'll see how we go. I think we still have a chance, and I'll hold on to that.
So I just think it's phenomenal how accurate he was able to predict it, even with only 0.7% of the count counted. That's kudos to him. I have to say, well done. The upper house is, obviously it was a lot easier to predict Labor winning, but getting down
lower
to the
house.
nitty...
For the lower house.
Yeah, sorry, the lower house, but effectively he's won the upper house as well. But getting down to the nitty gritty to which minor parties that don't make up the crossbench and all that sort of stuff. I think this election has been really, really interesting. So one of the... trying to think of the right word. So I've been watching, because you have been on the show quite a lot, I have been watching the count, probably to my own detriment. It's like, oh, Bass don't get in. Oh, no, he's not. Yes, he is. Oh. And
that's why I switched off from it about a day or so ago.
So for the people listening out there, at one stage, Bass was one vote behind. And that was the difference between number 7 and number 6. So it's down to the wire. And so we said this, I don't know if you guys, one of the very, very early shows we did, I think it was the second show, we had Bruce Reynolds, Di Bain, David Ho, and I think we had someone else, I can't remember. This is going back season 1, episode 2. We were talking about how important it is, especially with local council, it's not compulsory to vote. And a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't matter, our vote won't matter. And Bruce Reynolds missed out a seat on the council of the Perth Council by 4 votes. That's it. That's how close he was. So, and we're having the same thing now. So, but Perth Council, I think there was 20,000 people voted. In the agricultural region, 106,000 people are registered to vote. Who checked the stats last?
Well, Emily's been doing a fantastic job. I mean, she does a great job all the time. But she's been doing some scrutineering for us as well. And her first time of doing it for this election was on Saturday evening, straight after the closure of the voting, which happened at 6 p.m. I think you were there for about 2 or 3 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's...
there was one vote that was clearly in our favour, and the woman who, one of the people counters, the one in charge says, "Oh no, that's we'll put that into the what do you call it? The
undecided.
Informal thing." She says it can be decided in head office, and I just wanted to make sure that vote got picked.
Yep.
So I made myself available to go and scrutinise, and that one came up today. I told the senior person in charge of that area that I wanted to make sure that vote was counted, because it was clearly a 1 in 2 boxes, and one was clearly had an S scribbled over it, and she said, "Oh, it looks like an X to me." I said, "Doesn't look like an X to me," and she didn't want to have. So anyhow, we got that one sorted.
Oh, that's good.
Plus,
you got 1 vote. Yeah.
That was the one.
We have a
105,000 to go.
So that's right.
But there is some bias going on. There was even today I picked up a couple of incidents where in favour of Labor, and there was one little box where it had a bit of a squiggle. Might have been an elderly man, bit of a squiggle, and a little bit of the squiggle went outside the box, and so then another one. And he goes, "Oh no, we can't allow that." I said, "Well, it's in the box." No, it's a little bit out of the
Slipped
box.
out,
So
yeah.
he said, "We can't allow that." It was an independent.
Wow.
Independent. So it was the only mark on the ballot paper. So I thought, okay, I'm going to remember that. So I went around looking at all the other ballots, as I was counting, and I found another one almost worse than what one that he just dismissed and made it informal. This one had a little bit of a squiggle, and the whole line went about 3 centimetres out of the box, and they allowed it because it was Labor. I said, hang on a minute.
There wouldn't be any bias for Labor, would there be?
And I said, excuse me, but I said, you just disallowed a vote similar to that, and this one is actually worse than the one that you just disallowed. I go, oh, no, that's fine.
No, we've been told.
And then there was another one where there was someone had actually wrote a star and a 1, and it wasn't even in the box. And I can't believe the woman who was counting it was going to go and ask her superior if that was permissible. I said, excuse me, it's not even in the box. It's 2 centimetres above the box. There's a lot of, you've got to watch.
I have done scrutineering in the 2017 election. And
unbelievable.
The games that they play is phenomenal. And it's like, I understand human nature. Like, we want our team to win. And everyone has a team because that's just who we are. We've got our favourites. But if you're doing a rule like that, the people who screens them and picks them, surely...
And there were a couple in there that all of a sudden they were informal votes, and they'd have to go through a couple of people to make them informal. Then all of a sudden they go, oh, here's one with a clear 1 in there. I'm going, hello, why wasn't that picked up before? Is someone in there putting 1s on the papers? I don't know. That one should go into that pile because that must have slipped through. I'm going, hello? There's clearly bias in there. There's clearly bias, but you can't...
It's human nature.
And there's only me wandering around. I can't watch them all the time, but, there's a couple there that went, oh, look at that. There's a 1 in there. How did they get through 3 checks?
Yep. So the question is, in the scrutineering room, how many people from each party are allowed in the room?
You're allowed one for each table.
Yep.
So you're allowed 1 in each for each table in the... Hang on, one person for each region.
Oh, for each region.
Each region. So, yeah.
Okay.
So they don't want to have too many people in there because of this COVID thing. But no one's wearing a mask. Only one person asked for a mask,
the fact that we've got
and he didn't even wear it after he asked the mask. So,
hey, freebie.
Well, exactly. I'll take it.
Well, so, yeah, speaking of biased, you've been more involved with small parties or minority parties than I have been. Have you seen biased in any other ways? Have you seen bias from mainstream media, for example?
Oh, gosh, the media, unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely. I've contacted 6PR regarding the mask wearing, which I didn't agree with the mask wearing because it can cause a lot of illnesses. I had a friend who's got emphysema and she was too frightened to go outside and buy her food and groceries for fear of being thrown in prison or getting a $50,000 fine. Then she couldn't breathe. I mean, this woman needs oxygen. People with emphysema need oxygen. And I just thought it was just criminal. And so I phoned up 6PR to talk about masks, and before it even got to go on air, I was asked what was my opinion about masks. I said, I don't agree with them. I said, oh, look, you've run out of time. Look, we'll give you... Oh, look at that, we've run out of time.
Thanks for the phone call.
We'll give you a call back. Thank you. And I haven't even given them my phone number. How are they going to give me a call back?
A very good friend of the station wanted to call up talking about the mandatory vaccination side of things, especially with the children. And so they, just before she was due to go on air, was like, oh, do you like Trump? And she said yes. And they go, oh, ended the call. And it's like...
It's like a filtering system.
Like, what's that got to do with anything? And then
she may have liked him before he became a president, when he was a tycoon with properties
and lots of money and the beauty queen pageants and all that sort of stuff.
So why don't they talk about the hard issues? I mean, the WA Health Act is a real serious piece of legislation. I mean, it's just
there's a lot of problems with it.
We had this full page. Someone kindly donated some money to our party, and we were able to put a full page article in the West, detailing, letting people know that this bit of legislation and what it involved, like coming into your home, a police officer can come in, apprehend you, forcibly test you, vaccinate you, restrain you, remove items of clothing, even underwear. and even remove you and your children, whatever. I mean, the act is absolutely abhorrent.
And this was passed in 2016.
And when you mention it to people, they start siding and making excuses. I mean, this is what this was called the Stockholm syndrome, where they start making. I said, "You're making excuses." I said, "This is in the act."
My mum is going to hate me for this one. So we were problematic children out Bess, and every time the school would call up, say, "Oh, Travis has done this," or "Travis has done that," Mum would go, "Oh, mortgage, I don't want to know. And so she had these images that us kids were such great children because, you know, we cleaned the dishes sometimes when we were at home. We might clean our room every now and then. But, like, she had these images and she didn't want to shut it. Doesn't matter what sort of information they gave her. And I love you, Mum. I definitely do. Enjoy your new house, by the way. But it's... Yeah, like there's so many people out there, if it makes them feel uncomfortable, they'd rather ignore it than actually deal with it. And I think that's something that's a little bit scary, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of the head in the sand, but it's also, I think people are just, I think they're buying into the brainwashing that goes on in mainstream media. And they're going, no, people should take this for their own safety and everybody else's safety. Yeah, but how safe is this thing? Nobody says that it's safe. I mean, how many countries just said that we're pulling it off, we're pausing or stopping this whole program because of the potential risk of people dying? And it seems like the people
elderly people are getting a letter from Pfizer introducing them to this injection. I'm not going to even call it a vaccine. I don't even think it is a vaccine.
Well, because, it hasn't been tested.
Because it says this will not prevent you from getting COVID. It is to help you alleviate the symptoms. Like, well, this is actually in their literature they sent to these people in nursing homes. I've got the letter at home.
The interesting too with people that are very biased about this, they go, no, it has been tested. How can it have been tested? It's come out in the last, 6 months or less?
One of the questions that got put to me a while ago about the vaccine, and they said, what happens when you've got two people that have been vaccinated and they have a child? How's that going to affect the child? Because there's a lot of drugs out there and medications that don't affect the person straight away. A prime example of this is Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. It's a pesticide. It doesn't affect the person that gets squirted with it. It affects their genetics. And so it's their kids that suffer. So how can they test what it's going to do to
the next generation?
This is a good question, Travis, and you're almost bordering on being a scientist for asking such question in these days.
Please don't call me a scientist. I still have morals. No, sorry. So that's bad to every scientist out there. Please don't hate me. No.
There's a check waiting for you in the mail. But the idea is now you fit the criteria perfectly. The idea is no one's asking, is this thing going to stop transmission when you take it? No. Does it? It doesn't stop that. Okay. Does it stop it if the strain veers off and it becomes a different strain?
Like the UK strain, the South African strain, COVID-20.
Russian strain.
So, and the Russian strain now?
I'm sure there's got to be.
I think they're rushing to get a vaccine for it.
They're rushing for it. And so the answer there is no. So then what is it actually doing?
Sorry, I had to slip the dad joke in there. So
yeah, no, it's fine. I do it all the time. So I mean, these are the questions people should really be asking.
And the FDA hasn't approved it. People don't realise that the FDA hasn't approved it, but so it's passed under emergency powers.
I'm surprised this radio station has not been cut off right now because of the time we've just spent talking about this.
No, that's all right.
We interrupt this reception because you've run out of time.
No, we've still got another minute before we have to go to a message. So, that's kind of interesting because I thought it did have FDA approval. So what I might do...
no, it hasn't. It hasn't.
It hasn't. That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. What I might do, I'm going to go jump onto a quick message from the sponsors because one of the big critics of this show is we don't stick to time frames.
Fair enough.
We're pretty bad at it, actually. I'm going to go jump into a message, and then when we come back, I'd like to keep chatting to you guys, especially about what's going on with the election and what's going on after the election. And if the vote for the agricultural region is as close as what I'm seeing, it's like 99 votes are in it. And that's not a joke. It's not 99 laugh balloons. It's literally 99 votes. Will you be calling for a recount?
Absolutely.
So we'll tackle that one after these quick messages. So have we got messages queued up? Yes, we have. So we will be back shortly.
The following program may contain coarse language. Listener discretion is advised.
Opinions expressed on Carter's Corner are entirely independent of the opinions of Radio 89.7 FM's wise board, talented management and wonderful sponsors. Carter's Corner respects the right of each individual to hold and express an opinion unfettered by the shackles of political correctness and without fear of quivering in the quicksand of cancel culture. Radio is for entertainment, not censorship.
Hey, how's the water tasting at your place? Could it do with a healthy refresh? Our station sponsor, West Oz Water Filters, has the answer for you. Healthy families and communities have been their priority for over 20 years. They listen to your water filtration needs and will recommend a system to solve your home or caravan problem. A proud family WA business, West Oz Water Filters is here for you. To find out more, simply search West Oz Water Filters and make an appointment today.
Need to unwind and take a load off for your drive home? Then join Alan and Rhonda for Thursday Kickback from 3 to 6 p.m. They will have you covered with all of the best music, traffic updates, plus their regular segments such as feature artists and of course their light-hearted humour. You've got to love a joke or two. Enjoy all of the entertainment. It's Thursday Kickback on 89.7 FM and streaming on 89.7fm.com.au.
Does your internet blow more than the Freo Doctor? Download slower than merging on the Mitchell? Connection more up and down than a gym buff at Jacob's Ladder? Say goodbye to buffering and hello to Pentinet's Perth-powered internet. We're bringing Perth's internet up to speed because we live here too. For super fast, reliable fixed wireless, NBN and LBN fibre internet, get online now with Pentinet, your local Perth internet provider. Head to pentinet.com.au and check your address to see if you qualify.
Proud station sponsor.
Did that stop? Yes, it did. Awesome. Okay, Carter's Corner. Sorry, I don't normally see this screen come up, but it's all good. It's all good. System's working. It's doing its thing. Carter's Corner, Travis Carter. We have Bass Tadros, Health Australia Party candidate for the agriculture region, possibly the Honourable Bass Tadros.
MLC.
Doesn't that have a great ring to it?
Yeah, I think it does.
And
we just got to get voted in first.
Yeah, the other guest we have here is Emily Wallis. I nearly called you Wireless. I don't know why. Emily Wallis, Party Secretary for WA. Yes, WA or
That's
nationally?
right.
WA.
No,
Okay.
WA.
So we're here because one of the big things we want to talk about on this show, we did go off on a bit of a tangent just before the messages. Bass is like a couple of hairs away from becoming an MLC.
Well, I mean, look, there's still a chance, but the thing is, when you see the numbers going up and down like this, you kind of want to leave the numbers alone for a little bit until they settle down. The other day, I think it was yesterday, I've lost track now, because it's been a huge campaign, and at the end of it, you feel like you've run a marathon and you're kind of dizzy and you need to sit down. So we were 1 point away from getting in front of legalised cannabis. And when we do that, we get basically the preferences from them come through to us, and it moves us up the ladder, and then get in front of the Greens, and then you're up the ladder again, and so that's where we were a couple of days ago. But we're still at like 50% of the count at the moment. So
They've underestimated the amount of ballots that people, the early ballots that people, you know, they haven't got the staff to count them. We've been told that this might be another week away and more because they haven't got enough staff. 72 staff didn't turn up in there.
72
didn't turn up to help count all the postal ballots.
It
There's
could be another
mountain
week,
of
yeah.
postal ballots.
I'm thinking, I wonder if they've all got COVID. No.
Who knows?
So they just can't keep up. They've got a mountain of these things.
Yeah.
They haven't even checked them through. So
maybe America can give us the Dominion system to do the count.
Well, I think
You'll have all sorts of issues then.
A couple of the independents might win then. No,
well, actually, all the ballots, anyone who voted below the line is actually going to be scanned in a Xerox machine in Bassendean. That's starting tomorrow.
Accidentally then get Joe Biden in here as Premier instead.
I'd so laugh if Joe Biden did win in Australia.
So any ballot that's got I've seen ballots where people have made a mistake and they put the numbers outside the box. So those ones are going to clearly have to be manually entered.
Yep.
But some of them writing, I don't know how good this machine is, but I've got my doubts on how accurate it's going to be. It's going to.
Now I have to ask. So a lot of people don't realise this. When I did scrutineering, I saw so many swear words, obscenities drawn on the ballots. It's hilarious. So a lot of people they just hate the voting system, like with a passion. How many male genitalia do you think you've seen since?
I've seen at least 2. One was Sean the sheep with this wonderful appendage, this little curly little sheep, and another one just to clearly looked like a rocket actually, but whatever, I don't know. You
they were voting in the Rocket Man.
So I don't know. There's all sorts of words like blah blah.
Remember,
blah.
we're a community radio station, so let's keep it slightly clean.
Blah
I've
blah
got to tell
blah.
you, on a very similar note, the number of people that I saw out in the bush going in, I'm voting for Mark. And you go, he's not in this region. He's in Rockingham. You're not directly voting for Mark.
So that just again ties back into what we're saying about
the amount of informal votes is really quite staggering. Actually, I was quite surprised at every region. There's quite a few sheets of blank forms where people don't even want to put anything, or if they do, they write ones all over it, or they write numbers all randomly which you can't use.
So would they be donkey votes?
Yeah, they're just completely random. Or someone just went along the top and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right the way along. Then the next line down they continued 23, 24, 25. The next line down 27. They continued on just numbered across the next row to the end. That's all they did. I mean.
Well, a lot of people
imagine trying to count that.
Saying, I'm only doing this because I don't want the fine.
Yeah.
A lot of people did say that. So
there's a lot of disillusioned people out there just don't want to, and that someone would write, none of you are worth voting for, or something like this, that kind of thing.
Do you think the Australian people have lost faith in the political system at all?
There's a lot of.
I think that. I mean, the answer to that is, in my opinion, I think yes.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's probably part of the reason why I wanted to jump in is because we want to bring in people that are non-career politicians to give people a choice to look at that. We also have really good values in the sense of the 5 pillars: healthy people, healthy environment, democracy, society, and I think those balanced values are neither left or right, and you can get people having a reason to vote again, or having a reason to think, oh, there's someone in there that actually cares, and it gives them hope. So from that aspect, I actually feel that we've won in that sense. We've won in the sense of we've done what we set out to do: give hope, give choice, give options to people. So,
and if people are too blinded to see what we stand for, I mean, they just get what they deserve, don't they? I mean,
it's too hard for people to see what we're about, though, because you won't get any light.
No one wants to cover it. No one wants to cover it. No one wants to even talk about our party, what we stand for. So
I've tried to get Bass in here a few times.
A
few times, like every week.
Good on you.
Other than good community radio like this or good community TV,
but how many times,
you're not going to see it in mainstream.
How many times they've gone to an election promising something, and then once they get into government, they just do the exact opposite. I mean, people do become disillusioned.
Well, they're the two traditional dislike things that people hate about politics. Is one, politicians beat up other politicians to make themselves look good instead of being a solution. And two, false promises prior to the elections. And then after the elections, no one ever hears anything about those things that they promised anymore. Where's the extra jobs? Where's the things that they promised? Well, no one knows about it.
It's actually kind of interesting that you bring up the false promises, because there's actual statistics that you can look up. One, I can't remember what they call it, but they do, right, these are all the promises a politician made, and what percentage of these have they fulfilled during their term. So that's something that's actually measurable, and it'd be really interesting to see in the last 4 years, how many of the promises that the Labor government has actually made, how many of those promises have they actually done?
The other thing that I think is really unfair, I mean, from politicians, we've all learned to expect that they're going to say bad things about each other. But the media calling a minority party false things, that's unacceptable. You know, smearing a party going, they're the anti-vaxxers, That's absolute BS.
Yep.
Because, I mean, we know for a fact in our party that's not our value. Do we want to see things like the no jab, no play being regulated? Definitely.
Absolutely.
Because we think a lot of families have called out and said that this isn't fair, it's not right, this isn't what we want. And I don't think anybody was ever consulted on that before they passed that.
So, just you made a very good point there about the media, and WA Today was really good for this one. I don't know if you can call them a media, but Bell Tower News is another one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bell Tower Times. But they actually do say they're a parody page, so I'll let them off. Where there was
certainly not mainstream.
Yeah. But God, their followership is huge. So there's the party you were talking about, the anti-vaxxer party. That's
we've even
no
been
mandatory vaccination. We've actually had the leader of the party on this very, very show, and I can tell you now for a fact he is not an anti-vaxxer.
Well, he's more of a liberal than he is an anti-vaxxer, that's for sure.
People choose to have a vaccine. That's completely their choice,
Yeah.
and we won't stop them. They have their right, absolutely a right to put whatever they want into their body. But people who choose and do some research and choose it's not the right thing for me, we should be given. We should have a choice too, and it shouldn't be forced on us.
Well, isn't under the Biosecurity Act? It actually says whether you can choose not to have
informed consent.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if they do try to make it mandatory. And Mark McGowan has tried to make it mandatory for school children going to school to have the COVID vaccine. So I'd be very, very curious to see if he can get that one through. Like, I know he can now; he can just force it through. But what sort of backlash is there going to be? I think that's
interesting.
And now here's another question: how do you think the media is going to report on it if Mark McGowan does try to force through no jab, no play for school children?
Well, we've seen how they've been so far. He's obviously a hero, and obviously they're going to continue their same bias, their same narrative. Look, it'd be good to see some fairness, and what would be really good is to see some accountability in the media, and that they're held to a certain account for the information that they report, and that they're liable for any misinformation. I think that would be really important.
As well.
Yeah, so sorry about that, just my phone's ringing. I was telling the producer to go pick it up for us. So I'm going to now jump topics a little bit. Knowing that the federal election could potentially be coming up, and with the amount of success Bass has had in the state election, let's say Bass doesn't make it up. I hope you do. I genuinely hope you do. Can he run for the federal?
I think a lot of things would need to change first. I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll just wait to see what happens with the counts.
Bass got a family and children, so it's not the easiest.
It's been a lot of work. So we'll see what happens. I mean, and it'll also depend not only on this count, but when will ScoMo call the election? We heard from Antony Green from the ABC just saying that it could be anywhere from August.
So August is the earliest he can call it. I think he said, was it March or May?
I can't remember, either March or May.
Yeah,
I thought May.
Pre-election, I'd been hearing a lot of talk about it was going to be called somewhere between August and November.
Right.
I don't think anyone actually planned for WA to be as much as a flogging. I don't think anyone planned for the Liberal parties to turn totally green.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone planned for the Liberal Party to have a leader who... I've been very critical of Kirk, and I think I've got a genuine reason to be, considering how poorly he performed and his party performed at this election. Now, I just hope people like... we had Brett Raponi on the show. He was phenomenal. I really wish that he got in. I think that he could have worked very well in Parliament. Hopefully he can get people more like Brett Raponi, or a lot more a leader who has actually got a bit of backbone and has the ability to not only to stand up for the Western Australian people, but also be able to, the intelligence to be able to have a genuine good argument, who's able to stand up for the Western Australian people, and who doesn't just go, oh yeah, let's bipartisan. It's like, well, some things we don't want bipartisan. We need representation, and I think the fact that we didn't have that representation.
They're absolute cop-out terms with this bipartisan and apolitical. I don't want to hear about them, to be honest, because people that call those things are real fence-sitters. And we're at a time in our life at the moment where it's unprecedented times, and you can't afford to sit on a fence. You've got to make decisions, and you've got to be a leader. And if you're not going to be a leader, then get out of the way, sit down, shut up, and let somebody else do the job. I think it's that easy.
He was very young. He was very young and inexperienced.
I'm not talking about him specifically. I'm talking about anybody that gets into any leadership role.
I shouldn't be too harsh on Kirkup for this one, because you got to remember when COVID started, he wasn't the leader. He inherited a lot of Lisa Harvey's problems that she left behind. And even right from the start, she was saying, oh, bipartisan this, we'll work with Labor for this. And like at no point, even to the point when Mark McGowan changed the Mineralogy Act, they just rolled over. They didn't challenge it in any way whatsoever.
So maybe not only did he inherit her baggage, but he inherited whoever the media publicist was, because their media, whatever marketing campaign they had, was absolutely amateur.
To be honest with you, I didn't see one.
Well,
it wasn't
maybe non-existent.
I'm trying to. I think it was about 8 weeks out from the election was the first time I saw a Liberal Party advertising on YouTube, Facebook, or any social media platforms. I'd seen a couple of signs on the side of the road, but that was it. Like, it was just non-existent. So I'm wondering if the major donors for the Liberal Party saw this coming and just abandoned ship, and they didn't have any funds to actually do the marketing campaign at all.
Or they turned and donated it to Labor instead.
Possibly the Greens, because effectively they're the same party.
Right.
So, yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting.
Labor did not hold back, though. With their marketing from the start to the end, even on the last day, we were driving to Northam and there were billboards on the highway.
Flashing.
Electronic ones, lighting up with Mark's face on them. So they did not hold up.
It wasn't the first one. There was 2 or 3 down the freeway.
Yeah, there was no money spared for that campaign.
Oh, definitely. And
I wonder how much it cost the taxpayers.
That's something I'd love to know. Because, God, Labor's not going to get so much money back, because a lot of people don't know this. So for every primary vote a major party receives...
So that's the lottery that Antony Green was talking about.
Yeah.
Not so much the preference.
But they're not supposed to be using it for advertising, though. It's supposed to be using it for policies, and isn't it?
No, this is different money. So let's say I'm running a campaign and I spend, let's say, $10,000 and I get 4%. So, and that 4% works out about 10,000 votes. These are not real figures, by the way.
No.
Just making it up.
So out of those 10,000 votes, I get $2 for every primary vote that I put through, as long as it's above 4%.
Right.
So if I got 10,000 votes, that means I can claim back from the taxpayers $20,000.
Right.
Okay. So
even though you spent 10.
So if up to, so it's dollar for dollar. So if I can claim 20 but I only spent 10, I can get the $10,000 back.
Right.
So with considering that Labor got such a great primary vote, they're going to get a vast majority of this money back from the government. So during the federal election between Labor and Liberals, they claimed nearly $60 million back of taxpayers' money.
You mean they're going to get back the money that they give themselves?
Pretty much.
That they've spent on the media.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
no wonder why that was biased.
It'll be really, really, really interesting to see how much money they get back. So, and there's another one that's come up, and this is pretty much a shoo-in now, especially because Mark McGowan's taken over the upper house and the lower house. So I think it was WA Today newspaper did an article about the sale of the East Perth power station. Right. So the person that he's actually selling it to is Terry Stokes and Twiggy Forrest. And they're selling the power station, which Landgate says is worth about $26 million for $1.
What?
Yeah.
No. And this is not illegal?
Well, it's not, because they put it through Parliament, so it's an authorised sale. So Landgate's trying to block it, and now the government was planning to override it, and then an election came up, so it was all like sitting there. So it'll be really interesting
to see. Did you hear anything about this in the mainstream media?
Well, WA Today did it, but nothing on Channel 7. But you've got to remember, would
6PR, did they do anything about it?
Would Stokes do anything about it, considering he's the beneficiary? Now, one of the arguments they were putting forward is that the site, because it used to be a power station, so there's contamination got to deal with
PCBs
and all the equipment and stuff like that. There's quite a few safety hazards.
Could it get any more obvious than selling it for $1?
It gets worse.
Right.
The government has already granted them $66 million to decontaminate the site.
Oh, no.
So their argument was that decontamination was going to be worth more than the actual land value itself, so that's why they wanted it for $1.
Oh, my God.
And they're trying to get the value dropped to $1 so they don't have to pay the stamp duty on the $26 million on top of that.
No.
So once they develop it, that could be worth anywhere up to $200 million. So effectively, the WA Labor government, it can be argued that they've just gifted, on top of all the advertising money, effectively a $106 million block of property, which they can develop even further and make hundreds of millions of dollars off it.
Should we, maybe something like this deserves an independent inquiry, and the inquiry could be, what says that the site is contaminated in the first place? According to what reports?
Well, they've already had the money to decontaminate the site.
Right.
Haven't they already done some of the buildings and done some of the buildings up and what have you? Sure, they would have done those buildings up without having some kind of
procedures in place. Now, where has this come up? How have the Australian people known about this, like the West Australian people known about this? Who's going to oppose this in the upper house? Because there's just flogging off Australian assets. Like, that's a lot of money. That's an insane... Like, I'm pretty sure the teachers' budget is about $280 million a year for all our teachers, and they're massively underpaid. Like, this is like an entire education system. Like,
all for the people that voted them in.
So, and you try telling that to a Labor person, the amount of people that have shouted at me over this is quite entertaining, actually.
So they believe it's okay to sell that site for $1.
Yeah, well, they've already planning for it, but there was 5 people that were planning to develop the land. There was a couple of developers who got kicked out, and it just so happens the ones at the end offered $1, which I find quite interesting. So
I'll offer 2.
Now
I'll go 3.
Why don't they put it up for auction?
I'm sure it'll sell for a lot more if they put it up for auction. So now what we're going to do, I am conscious of the time. We do actually have someone in this office right now who knows a lot about this thing. So the Honourable Charles Smith is in the office. So I think we get him in after the break and he can tell us a lot more about the details because it was actually his office that told me about it. So, and I did my own bit of research, so that's how I found out about the West Australia.
He's currently, I mean, I don't know, we'll have to ask him until when, my regional MP, because I live in the East Metro.
Oh, do you really?
Yes.
So do I. I'm right on the border. So anyway, we're going to go to a message, and when we come back, we'll have Charles Smith in the studio with us as well. Now, I do need to play some music as per our regulations, so we will be getting into a song as well. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So this is Travis Carter, Carter's Corner. We've got Bass Tadros, Emily Wallis, Health Australia Party, and we will be with Charles Smith, Honourable Charles Smith, still for a couple of months, I think, after this. So we'll be right back.
When the unexpected leaves you shattered, reach out to Master Glazier Campbell at Woodvale Glass, your station sponsor. Campbell has plenty of points on the board, being in the business for over 45 years, so don't wait. Phone 0432 543 316 for all your glass, mirror, security screen, wardrobe and shower screen needs, or check out woodvaleglass.com.au.
It is possible to stop using drugs.
We can help.
Call Narcotics Anonymous. 1300 652 820.
Or look us up on the web, na.org.au.
A Wanneroo City community announcement. The Australian War Memorials for Country for Nation exhibition honours the contribution and service of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in our Anzac forces. Through art, object, dance and music, we honour their stories and their sacrifice. Exhibiting at the Wanneroo Gallery from the 17th of February until the 27th of March. Head to wanneroo.wa.gov.au/forcountryfornation to find out more.
Carter's Corner, Travis Carter in the studio still. We're still here. Haven't been kicked out yet after some of your comments, Bass. Oh my God, shocking.
Yes, I'll take it.
We do have Emily Wallis, Health Australia Party Secretary for WA. We have Bass Tadros, potentially Honourable Bass Tadros.
Always honourable, with or without this election.
I'm going to leave that alone.
As far as I know.
And you gave away the next guest. So we do have Charles Smith, current MLC for the East Metro area for the West Australia Party. Say g'day.
G'day. Good evening, everyone.
Through the roof. Say g'day again for us.
G'day.
G'day. Okay, so we were just talking about the sale of...
the East Perth Power Station.
Thank you.
Why?
Because you have actually had a hand in it, and
Have I?
not. Sorry. So just to be clear,
Maybe a foot.
I've actually done a tour in there, like when I was a kid. Like their school took us out there to it, so that's kind of cool. It was really, really interesting, actually. The amount of graffiti on the building is phenomenal.
It's a great location. It's like within a short distance to the CBD. It's a walk.
Yes, I'm sure it's going to make some lovely apartments for someone.
Yes,
for a developer.
And some make someone a crap load of money, like an insane amount of money.
I'd love to buy that.
Who are these people who are going to benefit?
I'd buy it
Who
for
are
three.
Charlie, now you raised this in Parliament House, didn't you?
So it's been raised in Parliament. I mean, so my understanding is the great people of Western Australia paid for the area to be cleaned up.
66 million,
which was a significant sum, and then was cordially sold to Mr. Kerry Stokes and Andrew Forrest for a measly $1 payment.
It's already sold?
It's gone.
So it is definitely sold now?
Yeah. They sold it ages ago.
Okay.
And they're allegedly going to turn it into some lovely apartments to develop.
Gift
courtesy
from
of the
the
taxpayer. That's right. Yeah. Isn't it lovely? Something about that just stinks. I mean, if that's the truth, which I think it is, it definitely stinks.
So the bit that I want to know...
and we've been wondering about media bias.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Bass. So when you have a look at the local community newspapers, like The Guardian down in Rockingham, I think it's also The Guardian in the Armidale area, the whole way through the election, it was like roughly five full-page ads to Labor to one story about the Liberals.
Oh, they'll put them at the back page.
No, in the middle, so no one reads it. Because they flick to the back for the sports and they have to look at the front for like the important things. But Dr. Andrew Booty was the Member of Parliament where I'm from, and he was back page, front page. Yeah, Tony Booty. What did I call him? Andrew Booty. Oh, whoops. Anyway, so Tony Booty. I'm done, leave that alone.
Sure.
No, so with Tony, he was back in front. You just want to say booty, don't you? I've got a question for you in a minute. Because now that the shackles are off for you, you can go to town on like the goss in Parliament House, which is going to be awesome. But yeah, the level of advertising for Labor versus the Liberals.
Look, if I can just make a brief comment on what we've witnessed in this election. What we've witnessed is something Joseph Goebbels will be proud of. Right? We've had colossal propaganda from the 7 News Network media empire pushing Mark McGowan as some sort of saviour-like figure, and also pushing a fear agenda, which obviously has worked, and it's something which is proven to have worked. It worked in Nazi Germany, it's worked here. Exactly the same concept. And people have bought it. And we can see that in the incredible numbers of people who voted for Mark McGowan, keeping WA safe and strong. It's just a message straight out the playbook.
Even though he wasn't in the East Metro area, he wasn't in the agricultural area, who do you think with this election, especially Charlie, is it confirmed that your seat's gone?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
it wouldn't have been the case if it wasn't for the Labor landslide, and potentially it's going to cost more than one seat. I mean, I've never seen in the Upperhouse more than 2 seats for Labor anywhere, and in this case we're seeing 4, we're seeing 5 out of 6. Yep. It's an absolute, it's exactly what the media was asking for. Don't vote for the small guys, don't vote for anybody else, because it could cost Labor a seat. I don't know how many seats they were going for. I don't know if they realise what democracy is.
The hilarious thing is, the West Australian newspaper's been promoting McGowan continuously for 2 years. Just a few days ago, they've got a front page saying, "Welcome to Mark's one-party state." I mean, that's something that they've created.
Yeah.
And now they've got the gall to complain about it.
It's so they can say they've got the party
or maybe they were celebrating it, Charlie. You know, they're saying, "Welcome to the Emperor's."
The mainstream media in Western Australia are a real problem. They are a real problem to this state with the propaganda and disinformation, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay, here's a question for you then. A couple of years ago, might have been about 4 to 8 years ago, they changed the anti-monopoly laws around the media. So you can't own print media and radio. Sorry, print, TV and radio all at the same time.
Or in the same region, because it was illegal to have that kind of monopoly. Well, you know, you can have a radio station in East Metro, for example. You can have a newspaper in East Metro, but you can't then join forces and have both medias of newspaper and radio in East Metro. Let's just
TV.
say. And then TV is another an added one.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they got rid of that law about 3 years ago and made it so that you could own radio, newspaper and TV. And for the people that are like, so what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is whatever you hear, see and read could all be absolute BS that's been propaganda and pushed to you, and you don't have a choice because there's no other...
Western Australia has become, in effect, a one-party state with one-party news propaganda outlet supporting that one party in Parliament. And that's the problem we face. And some have said, you know, the media really are the enemy of the people. And in this case, in WA, I think that's correct. They are. They've just hoodwinked an entire state.
I see K-Rudd jumping up and down on Twitter about the Murdoch empire, but I've never seen him jump up and down about any other media empire, and I wonder why.
Kevin Rudd's Labor.
Well,
Labor effectively just gave him a $100 million gift.
Well.
Plus all the advertising.
And I wonder why.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Well, you know, is he jumping up and down, raising and pointing the finger at the Murdoch empire to distract everybody from what else is happening for his mates?
Isn't that mostly what politics is all about? Distract them while we do something else that's a bit dodgy?
Look over here, and let's sell that over there for $1.
The magician. $1, yay.
So now the next question is, so we're supposed to be having, especially when we've got a one-party state at the moment, so which we have with
This
Labor.
is democracy. Travis, welcome to 2021.
Well, it's not democracy. That's the great irony when we have a one-party state media outlet promoting one party.
But you have a choice.
That is not democracy. That is not a choice.
But we have a fair
completely
election.
Biased. And some of us started to raise that issue in Parliament some months ago.
Right.
Was that a guy called Charlie?
Amongst others. And, you know, it's a real problem that people are not open to a diverse opinion.
Yeah. Do you think
told one story?
You're not allowed a freedom of speech. We are being suppressed.
What freedom of speech?
So
we don't have it.
So just going back to my original question was having a one-party state and a media that is a one-party media. Where do people get their information? How do we keep them accountable for what's going on?
Oh, thanks for this very good question now, Travis. Now, following the mainstream media's protocol, we've run out of time. I'm kidding. So what do you think about that, Charlie?
Well, we desperately need another news printed source in Western Australia. We desperately need a new source for differing opinions, for people to actually start thinking and reasoning for themselves, rather than buying their opinions wholesale from Kerry Stokes' empire. That's the problem we have in this state.
We need some independent sources, just like this community radio.
See,
that's one of the things I'm willing to support.
Yeah, well, you're here. So one of the things that I am curious about, is it time for newspapers like, we've got the Epoch's Times, the... I always get this wrong, Superrule newspaper. There's a few other the smaller newspapers. They're not community newspapers, but they are very, very small.
Yep.
Is it time for the Western Australian people to start really focusing on making sure they're buying locally produced and operated newspapers rather than going to the big ones for all the news information?
I think totally we should boycott some of these mainstream one-sided
well, I don't personally know anybody who reads the West Australian newspaper, so that's a good thing.
Good.
But I'll put the call out now to any philanthropic multi-millionaires to get their backsides to WA and get a new paper being printed here, because we desperately need one.
Definitely. I'm looking for the name of, I think, is it the Fairfax in Fremantle?
Fairfax Media?
Yeah. No, bear with me. There's a young journalist who's published something in some sort of Fremantle. Here we go, Fremantle Press.
The Fremantle Press.
And I was so impressed. I think the reporter's name is Emma Young, and she reported on the first day of that 5-day lockdown that we recently had. Again, a similar story to the East Perth Power Station, where 2 projects were approved on that day, ironically, or is it coincidentally perhaps, for Kerry Stokes and for FMG.
Wow.
Like that. And apparently they were rushed through because we were in a state of emergency. So her report, I mean, since then I've been following her on Twitter. And do we need more of that?
I mean, talking about property development as one example of the disaster that awaits us, with complete control of the McGowan pro-developer government, everything is going to be signed off. There's going to be no consultation. It's going to be high-rise central popping up everywhere. It's going to be a disaster. The suburbs are going to be trashed, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.
You raise a really good point. In Ocean Reef, there's actually a residential community that decided to go up in arms. They formed their own group because there was meant to be a bit of a clean and a bit of a rebuild for that section of their town. And suddenly the government's rushed through and approved a huge development. And this was completely unexpected, unconsulted, unapproved.
The government gave themselves this power in the last parliament, and our friends in the Liberal Party and others voted it through. So what can you do? You've got these people in opposition who did agree with what the government were doing. It was just hopeless, and it's only like me and 1 or 2 others who were opposing all this stuff. I mean, what can you do?
There's a new minority party called the Liberal Party. Do you think they'll exist much after
not for much longer?
No. I wonder how they're going to fare in the next election, or potentially even the next federal election.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah, you've heard of them before. I mean, it's
the Democrats. They don't hear of the Democrats anymore now, do you?
It's not going to be any longer a 2 big party choice like we've always had historically. You know, the red and the blue. That was usually that's changing very fast.
Well, the great irony is, of course, the major parties actually merged into one entity some time ago, which is something I've pointed out many times in the Parliament. You know, at election time they just wear different coloured T-shirts.
That's exactly right.
So now we just have one party, which they always were anyway. So, in terms of political difference in opinion in Parliament, there's not much people are going to see that's very much
this
different.
Time you
so
bring
there wasn't
in the
any
GST,
opposition.
Look, next time we'll bring in this.
So
just...
the people who voted, that's what the people are going to get, and let's see what happens.
Right.
Okay, so now that the Liberals have, I'd like to say shown their colours, but...
What colours?
Yeah. So there's this massive void at the moment in WA politics. What do you think, as an actual current sitting member of Parliament, for not much longer, do you think there's any groups out there at the moment that have the ability to fill that void? Like the West Australia Party, the Health Australia Party, if they get up, farmers, shooters, fishers, and I would have liked to have said One Nation, but they're totally non-existent. They got absolutely the floor wiped with them. So
no, there's no one as yet to step into this enormous vacuum. Over the last 4 years, as I said to many people, there's a huge vacuum on the right that needs filling. Now it is a universe that needs filling with a good quality right-wing populist conservative voice. It needs to be well funded, and that of course is the challenge. You need people with integrity who want to actually do something positive and make good quality public policy for the greater benefit of West Australian citizens.
Here's another question for you, and I've heard it put down multiple times, but at times of desperation, you grasp onto the roots coming off the cliff as you're falling down, whichever ones will save you. Is it time for all the minor parties in WA to bury the hatchet, say, right, enough's enough, we've got to join up to try and counter and fill this space that's left over between Liberals, Labor and the Greens? Because there's some sort of agreement. I know I've been shot down for this one before. It just doesn't make sense that Kirkuk would go so far to the left that even the Greens are on the right of them. So Is it time for all the right-leaning parties to finally say, you know what? Yes, we've got our differences, but we need to stop this and start working together as a team.
In an ideal world, that would be the case. The smaller parties banding together and working together. But there's too many opinions. And who's going to make the final decision? And who's going to take the leadership on this one?
Yep.
And those things get in the way of actually keeping them unified or in unison or in harmony to work together.
Why don't we try something that's very demographic, have all the parties on the right form a coalition, for lack of better words, where each party gets to do their own thing, but they will campaign together as a block to try and stop what's going on and try and fill that void as a single party. And let's say you do get 5 or 6 politicians in, still give each group the ability to vote how their constituents want.
I'll let Charlie handle this one.
Well, you're talking about an exercise in direct democracy. Be careful.
Is this the right time for it?
I think you've hit an area of interest there, right? Liberal democracy, I think, is failing citizens, right? People want to be engaged. That means we need a more direct democracy approach to what's happening. People want to be engaged in what bills are going through the Parliament, if they can have an input into what's going on. So that push towards a more direct democracy, I think, is an important issue that we need to pursue throughout Australia, really, and maybe throughout other Western democracies.
Okay.
What chances do we have now with the sea of red? I think it's going to be very hard, and I think what's going to happen going forward after this election is potentially the preferencing system is going to go out the window. Any small party that wants to get in will have to get over 14% to get elected. It's going to get harder and harder for smaller parties to have a voice.
I mean, what we've seen in this election is the failings of a liberal democracy allowing this to happen.
Yep.
It's too overwhelming. I don't think anywhere else in the developed democratic world has ever seen such a parliament like this exist. It's just completely incredible.
We've also seen the cost of broken promises from certain smaller parties that could have very well, if they'd kept their word, potentially, other than the Labor landslide, Charlie would have his seat, and there's no one I'd like to see more keep his seat, because he's honest, he's transparent.
Look, he's blushing.
Reasonably.
Well, and he's actually
holding the government accountable and raising, absolutely.
He's working hard to bring, to the surface some of the issues that others are too scared to say.
So what we need to do, because we are now 4 minutes over, we do need to go to a quick message. When we come back, I do want to throw out a bit of a challenge there. I'd love to get all the leaders of all the minor parties to actually come into the show and have a bit of a chat about what their plans are around trying to fill this void. So, if you're listening out there in the social media world, I'm looking at you.
Some of those leaders may not be leaders after tomorrow.
But the party secretaries, the party presidents and all that sort of, not just the politicians. I'd love to get Stonehouse in here again, because he was absolutely hilarious when he was on the show. Very, very intelligent gentleman. But we'd love to get them all in. So we do have access to 2 studios. So I have a feeling there's a way we can link the 2 boards together, and we can actually have...
Will you have room for all their ego?
Well, they probably just got popped because they all lost their seats. So,
That's
right. So we do have options to get multiple people in here at the same time. So I'd love to do that as a show, kind of brainstorming here at the same time. So the people listening in the Facebook world and all that sort of stuff, please let us know what you think. Would you like to see a coalition of sorts of all the minor parties? Is this something that will save
Are you proposing a rebel alliance?
Maybe... There's many things we call here. Maybe in opposition, in exile. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so we're going to go to a quick message. This is Carter's Con. Travis Carter, Honourable Charles Smith, possible Honourable Bass Tadros, and Emily Wallis. Always awesome to have her in here. We'll be right back after this.
Did you know your station sponsor, City of Joondalup, has 33 venues to hire for meetings and functions? The facilities range in size, functionality and location, so there is a venue to suit most of your needs. For more information on venue hire, visit joondalup.wa.gov.au.
Want to grow your business in the city of Wanneroo? Join over 400 other businesses and become a Wanneroo Business Association member today for just $30. Visit wanneroobusiness.com to find out more.
Station sponsor.
Sit back, relax, and fasten your seatbelt. Joining the dots will take you to the edge of the Viziversum.
Listen, learn, discover or rediscover, but most of all enjoy an eclectic mix on Joining the Dots. Saturday from 9 to midnight. Only on 89.7.
Is your internet slower than the Quinana before a long weekend? Do you get more foreign correspondence than Julie Bishop when you need tech support? Say hello to Pentanet. We're bringing Perth's internet up to speed because we live here too. 120 megabit per second download speeds, unlimited data and month-to-month plans available. It's super fast, reliable internet with local support from real Perth people. Head to pentanet.com.au and check your address to see if you qualify.
Proud station sponsor.
The 897 Community File. Improve your reading and writing. Read Right Now is a volunteer program that offers free literacy tutoring to adults. Available in the Wanneroo and Joondalup areas, an hour and a half once a week is all you need to improve your literacy. No textbooks or exams. To find out more, call 1800 018 802. Promote your non-profit organisation or community group, and it's free. Head to our website at 897fm.com.au.
Hi, we're back again. Sorry, it's we've had our next guest come in, so we're not quite ready for her. So we'll get through this one first, and then we've got another person that I'd really want to talk to because she's got insider information from within the Liberal Party about what's going on. So
juicy.
Really interesting to see what's going on. So that's for after the next break. We've got Andrea Tokaji.
Is something going on? I'm amazed.
What's this?
That's a
I'm
good
amazed
point.
that something's going on.
Well, it might shed a bit of light into what's
what's not going on.
Yeah, I think that's more appropriate things. Like I'd love to see. As much as I bag out Labor and Liberals served a purpose in our democracy, and I really don't want them to see them just turn to dust and go away because we needed, as bad as they were still in opposition to the Labor Party, and vice versa, Labor was in opposition to Liberals. But
they may have been their own complacency.
All good things come to an end, Travis.
Yeah. I know. And all new things.
Political parties do come and go.
Yes, they do. Or they get rebranded as the Greens. Anyway, so Carter's Corner, Travis Carter, we've got Emily Wallis, we've got Bass Tadros, both from the Health Australia Party, Honourable Charles Smith, the West Australia Party, and we are we're unpacking, as the mainstream media likes to call it, the federal election. So
State
election, thank you, Charlie. So I'm already starting to think about the federal election and how bad Liberals are going to get absolutely destroyed in that one as well.
Well, not according to ScoMo. I think there was an article today where he was saying, I'm taking credit.
ScoMo thinks he won the WA state election.
Well, he did win it.
Extraordinary.
He did win it for Labor.
Yeah, apparently he said it was his funding, the federal funding.
I told you both parties are the same.
Yeah.
You're not believing me.
No, I believe
There's no difference. There's no difference.
So it's the same side of the coin. Like, what is it? One wing on a bird?
One monster, two heads.
Shocking. All right, so for you guys here, from what's actually come out so far, what do you think was the biggest surprise in the state election? Say I said state now.
Maybe what's the biggest non-surprise with the way everything was heading, we kind of saw that it was going to happen. I mean, it was inevitable that people are going to be thinking that they're voting for Mark even when they're in outback WA, not in Rockingham, because of how much they've been told to vote for Mark. You know, I mean, there's only so much the brain can handle until it starts to believe that that idea is your idea and not the media's.
I think the overwhelming remarkable thing is, of course, the sheer enormity of the vote to the Labor Party and another significant swing. But if you look back over the preceding weeks in the West Australian newspaper, for example, and all their online stuff, they are continuously attacking Liberal Party candidates, right? Just all the time. They are mocking and lampooning these people and promoting the McGowan government. It's just never ending. And you can't beat that propaganda. You just can't do it. And the Liberals were just left completely clueless about what to do. And they were just embarrassed continuously by the media. And that was a political tool by the West Australian newspaper to, destroy the Liberal Party. And it was no secret. We had big funders like Satley saying the same thing. The Liberals are a complete mess, and I'm going to fund Labor and stick two fingers up at them. Yep. Their chips were down, mate. Toast.
The biggest surprise I found, and when Liberals had their backs against the wall during the federal election, the amount of smear and the attacks and just try and find every little piece of dirt that they could on the Labor candidates, or that they found anything they could throw out there. They even brought back up Sam Dastyari and the bottle of wine that got him kicked out and all that sort of stuff. I did not see any smear campaign whatsoever from the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big thing I found amazing, because I don't think I've ever gone through any election and I'm only 38 this year, and so I haven't gone through that many, but there was no smear.
So
I was
what
looking
you're
for
saying,
drama.
Are you saying there was only one-sided smear campaign, and that was paying out on the Liberals?
I think Zach Kirkuk actually
He smeared
highlighted
himself.
a dirty unit campaign from the Labor Party. He's probably quite correct. They got vast resources at their disposal, and Labor were a well-oiled machine. They brought in the people they needed, and they just went to town on the Liberal Party with their goal to destroy them, and they did.
Well, the thing that I found really interesting, it wasn't just the Liberal Party they attacked, is they nailed into the no mandatory vaccination party. I don't think they hit you guys very hard.
Well, they called us anti-vaxxers a couple of times, but again,
sticks and stones.
I mean, this is the thing. The smear campaign should be illegal. I think parties should present solutions, not try and point fingers on
to that, because
otherwise you'll have an American kind of political campaign.
Oh yeah,
where
within reason. Yeah. But let's say I want to vote for someone and they find out, let's say he just happens to be a closet rapist.
Oh, well, that's different. If you're doing something illegal or immoral or unethical, then you shouldn't. You shouldn't get away with that.
So wouldn't that be a smear campaign?
No, the smear campaign I'm talking about in this case was, how they painted learner plates on Zach Kirkup, and they said he's too
exactly
unfit.
lie.
I mean, but still, it's really hard. And I did see an article at some point where McGowan was asking, let's have a clean debate. And I thought, well,
Labor have always been a filthy organisation. Let's be frank about it, right? They're dirty. Election day, as people involved in election see, their volunteers are aggressive and rude. That's something which I experience every day when I was at the polling station. But look, I mean, the problem with the Liberals, they didn't even really go to town on Labor and attack them.
You're right.
And Labor have chinks in their armour, right? They've got huge involvement and influence with the Chinese Communist Party. That's just one example of a weakness that just wasn't exploited.
Yeah.
They didn't even go to town on people like Yang, for example, who was there just to be made an example of foreign influence. And they didn't bother going for it. I mean, what were they doing?
Yeah, so just so people who don't know, Pierre Yang, who won the South Metro #1 ticket for the Upperhouse, he has...
in the last election?
Last election was South. He went somewhere else. He's in a different area now.
North
Metro. He was a part of the United Front Workers Union, I think it is. I know there's a listener out there that knows very well. He'll correct me.
Well, he's a member of various United Front organisations, and if people don't know, United Front organisations are the foreign influencing arm of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
So
he's a member?
So he was involved with those organisations, right? So that was a tiny scandal 3 years ago or so, and it was just swept under the carpet. Apparently McGowan said, it's okay, he's a nice guy, so that's okay then, right? So these are big problems for our democracy, and I'll tell you what, Beijing are laughing their caps off at this election result. They are laughing their caps off.
How do you overtake a state in Australia without any bullets fired?
They've just done it.
Yeah, you'd buy it.
Yeah.
So just going back to Pierre Yang, so he... by the way, he used to be a member of our Army Reserves. So we've got a CCP, linked. I don't want to say agent, but linked, very, very heavily linked person as a member of our defence.
What?
Yeah.
And he's now a member of Parliament for the Labor government.
Yep.
And he's... I don't get this.
Yep.
I mean, how much more clear? What Liberals had this on a platter.
And they
didn't play it.
So I'd love to know how much donations Twiggy Forrest, so Andrew Forrest gave to the Labor Party this year.
Well, we know
100% of the iron ore that he sells directly to China. No one else.
100%.
100%.
We know he was instrumental in some of the things that were happening with Dan Andrews in Victoria. Yeah. I mean, it was on a global stage, being praised for the things that he was bringing over, face masks and some other things that he was bringing over from China. How did he have access to that?
Nasal swabs.
So
that's right,
other
the
one
PCR tests.
that I found quite interesting. Sorry, I just lost it. That's okay. You were talking.
It'll come
about
back to you.
Yeah, it will. It's one of those. I'll be driving home and it'll come back.
Hopefully, it'll come back soon.
And you can only conclude from that the Liberal Party are also compromised with Chinese Communist Party influence.
They got caught.
I.e. Gladys Liu in the Commonwealth Parliament, who's heavily linked to CCP involvement.
Yeah, no, she's a member of the.
So they're also compromised. Both parties are compromised by the Chinese Communist Party, which is a real problem in this country.
How deep do you think ScoMo goes with this compromise?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, the federal Liberal government are extremely corrupt, and they're there just to look after their mates. It's just shocking. The same as it is here. Look after their mates in the property developer game.
Have a look how many Liberal and Labor former members of Parliament are now employed by major Chinese companies who have got them on really cushy jobs working part-time for 6-7 figure incomes. Good one is Kevin Rudd, old Clubfoot. He's earning like $1.2 million for one of the Chinese education companies.
Kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party.
Spot on.
Right?
Yep. The board of directors earning $1.2 million a year.
That's all that political parties do. It's just embarrassing.
So with that level of, let's say, compromise rather than the other C word, which is corruption, what chance do you think, Charles, because you've been in that hot seat and had that experience, would a small party have, being in the upper house, to make any level of change or difference or hold these governments accountable?
The sad thing is, even though there are a few of us in this last parliament highlighting these issues, the mainstream media aren't interested in reporting what goes on if it goes against mainstream thinking, right? They don't want to hear you criticising China. Why? The West Australian newspaper is owned by Kerry Stokes. Huge interest in China.
Yep. Here's something for you on that one as well. I've got friends who do Falun Gong, the praying, cultivating and all that sort of stuff. So they were supposed to march at one of the Channel 7 Christmas pageants.
Sure.
They were lined up, ready to go. The pageant got stopped and they got told to leave because their Falun Gong symbols were up. So the Falun Gongs are the ones that made the allegations that Chinese Communist Party were harvesting their organs. That's right. They weren't allowed to march until they turned their drums around, took all their logos off and turned all their shirts inside out. All because the Chinese consulate complained to Channel 7 and Channel 7 took actions based off what the Chinese consulate said.
It's horrific. It's horrific, that kind of power.
So if you're wondering why the Channel 7, especially Channel 7, some of the other channels as well, they flat out refuse to report on it, ask them why did they take those sort of actions during the the Channel 7 telethon march and things like that.
On that note, were we at some stage hopeful that we could convert China to think more like our democratic belief system?
The powers that be some years ago thought they could control China and bring it to democracy. They failed.
Well, it's gone the other way around.
And China played the world and they lost. Anyway, that reminds me of a small story.
Sure.
When COVID first broke in mainland China, the McGowan government had just introduced a temporary trial flight service from Perth to Shanghai. So we're having like 3 flights a day or a week. And when this thing broke, Shanghai was close to Wuhan breakout, right? So I put out some statements asking for McGowan, you need to stop these flights coming back into Perth right now, mate. Right? Channel 7 actually picked that up, and they interviewed me.
Did it make it to the paper, though, or the show?
And on that night, the young lady presenter said, oh, well, it'll be on the news tonight. Was it?
The editor killed it.
Gone completely. When I learned it was Smith involved, calling for these flights to stop, they canned it.
Wow, that's interesting. So, so what we need to do, we need to go to a quick message, and I think after the break, we get someone who has experienced firsthand the smear campaign, but from the Liberal side of things. I think we get Andrea Tokaji in after the break. So we're going to go to a quick break and a song, and we'll be back after this on Carter's Corner with Travis Carter, Bass Tadros, Emily Wallis from Health Australia Party, and the Honourable Charles Smith. And I'm going to say honourable as much as possible until we're not allowed to say it anymore.
He's honourable.
I've been dishonourably discharged.
Dishonourably discharged. So we'll be back shortly.
And I can feel it on my own. And I don't know what to do when she calls me. The sun is on my back. And I don't know if she can feel it. Keep my head above the water now. Give me the real you. Keep my head above the water now. 'Cause I'm feeling like I'm gonna drown. Keep my head above the water now. Give me the real you. Keep my head above the water now. 'Cause I'm feeling like I'm gonna drown. Keep my head above the water now. Give me the real you.
Have you ever wanted to look at the stars up close? Well, now you can. Station sponsor the Gravity Discovery Centre will open a whole new world of amazement for you. Located north of Perth, just off Indian Ocean Drive, the Gravity Discovery Centre has something for everyone, with a great range of attractions. Climb the Leaning Tower, explore the Cosmology Gallery, get up close in the Biodiversity Gallery, and take in the marvels of the Milky Way at the Observatory. For more information, bookings and tickets, go to gravitycentre.com.au.
Need to talk about your alcohol or drug use? The team at Drug Info can answer your questions about the effects of different drugs, including alcohol, illicit and prescribed drugs, and provide advice and practical information. Call 1300 85 8584. It's free and confidential. Call 1300 85 8584. Drug Info is brought to you by the Alcohol and Drug Foundation.
Join me, Stephen Herbert, in the land of the good groove each and every Saturday night as we traverse the heady days of disco music and all its influences. From the underground to the overground, we focus on its rich tapestry of pioneers, producers, subcultures, history, DJs and hedonism on Disco Inferno every Saturday night from 6 to 9 p.m. Finding a cure for your Saturday night fever. Disco Inferno, only on 89.7.
All right, Carter's Corner back again. I don't know if you caught that on the mic, but a bit of banter in the studio. Always good. So, Travis Carter, obviously it's Carter's Corner, 897. Text line if you do want to send a message through to these fantastic guests, 0418 897 897. We have the Honourable Charles Smith on the green mic. How you doing?
Very well.
Bit of a bromance going on here, gentlemen.
Always. Like, just handsome. Like, it's hard having someone as good looking as me in this studio.
Exactly.
Like, Charlie's a little bit, but no. A
little bit meh.
And
the testosterone in here.
Maybe that's something. Oh, no, I won't say that one.
I haven't detected any coming from Travis.
I was going to say maybe that's what the Liberal Party needs, but no, that's a little bit harsh. And across
Is it
from
though?
me,
Harsh but fair, mate. Harsh but fair.
I'll let the listeners decide. Anyway, so feel free to chuck a comment. We'll see how quickly we get kicked off Facebook and YouTube. So we do have Andrea Tokaji, Independent and former Liberal candidate for Baldivis. How you holding up?
That just happened.
That just happened?
Yeah, look, after 14 years of campaigning for the Liberal Party, I had that experience, 6 weeks out from the election, being disendorsed for exercising my freedom of speech. And unfortunately, I wasn't the only one that week that was attacked by the media. There was a real onslaught on Conservative candidates, and there's a reason for that. Unfortunately, there are factions in the Liberal Party, and when I moved over here, I honestly thought that, West Australian Liberals were the last bastion of true conservatism. And what I discovered was, unfortunately, the leftist takeover, which we saw in Zach Kirkup being put up as leader, representing that left faction, and, of course, the policies that then rolled out during the election.
So one thing I've always wondered, and I've heard conflicting stories on this one. So his decision to cancel Coal and Collie and build a whole heap of, sun farms and wind farms and all that sort of stuff up north. Was there an indication within the party he was going to announce that policy, or did that just come totally left field?
Look, they pretty much kept the candidates in the dark in relation to their policy announcements. And, of course, Liberals this election understood that this was a COVID election. That's partly why I was disendorsed, of course. But the Liberals also knew that they needed to, so their strategy really was to try and capture that centre-left. But I think in trying to compromise on who they were, values, traditions, the foundations of kind of Liberal values, they compromised way too much and they lost their support base.
Yep. So I think you said the key word there. They tried to catch the centre-left vote, and I just think they went borderline extreme left.
Look, they did, and I know many Liberal Party members, Liberal Party incumbents or candidates that were absolutely flawed. But, as you know, during an election, you are supportive of the party, the policy announcements, and you toe that line. And I think a lot of the members and the candidates did that quite well without the public knowing or realising that there would have been internal questions around that. And of course, in the middle of a battle, you don't turn on your leader. So it makes strategic sense, but I think that also what we're seeing is that loss of democracy, right? Where is that democratic process of debating those policy ideas? For example, at federal conventions, at state conventions, at a party level, and then promoting them at elections.
I mean, I think what we've seen really, for me, demonstrates that the Liberal Party strategists have no idea what they're doing, right? If your opposition is quite left-leaning, you do not follow them at left. You have to demonstrate you are a different entity.
Alternative, absolutely.
That means you go back the other way and say, this is what we stand for, right? Politics over the last 5, 6, 7 years has become more partisan, right? The gap in politics is getting bigger. Not chasing each other around the same political spectrum. They need to move away and say what they represented. Not, we like what Labor are doing, but we're not quite Labor. People aren't interested, right? They want you to stand for something different.
Exactly.
Even if the message is only attracting 10, 12% of the vote.
Yeah.
People know what you stand for, right?
That's right.
Otherwise, you're just the same thing, and this is what's happened to them.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem the Liberal Party have. The strategists in charge have not got a clue what they're doing, I think.
Well, it is true, Charles. And look, they totally read the room wrong because they were trying to capture that vote, and in doing so, they lost a lot of their voters. I would love to see a study on how many Liberals actually voted Labor this election.
Lots.
So that is what breaks my heart. You know, like we've actually lost that membership. So if we've lost that membership, where have they gone? So if the Liberals have lost that support, constituency support, what's the alternative?
Exactly,
Where do they go?
exactly. I mean,
what party do they join? You know, how do they express their conservative values?
I had high-ranking members of the Liberal Party call me directly saying, I'm voting for you this election. The Liberals are bloody hopeless.
Yeah.
You know, it's a real crisis that they're facing. And from what I've seen so far, they're not even looking to fix the problem. They don't understand the problem still.
So one of the questions we've had come through from the social media side of things is, do you think the Liberal parties will survive the federal election?
Oh, look, that's another story. I think federally, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has retained a respect in the community despite, you know, the fires in January. We've all forgotten about his holiday to Hawaii with his family. And look, he has performed well during COVID, i.e. he's handed out the lollies, you know. And this is what frustrated me about the Western Australian election. Mark McGowan did not save Western Australia. Our geography saved us. At the same time, what the Premier and his members of Parliament did was hand out lollies. They handed out Skittles left, right and centre. So many promises. We're yet to see whether they'll fulfil those. But, you know, the article that I wrote last April, for which I was disendorsed, still stands. Are our fears of the coronavirus undermining our freedoms? Were we so afraid of this, you know, virus that we've not only given up our freedoms, but our right to political speech and political communication. We were so afraid that, you know, we voted the only person in we thought could save us.
But we weren't even in danger.
Exactly.
So,
hence the issue of propaganda, and hence the issue of the common person not thinking deeply about the ideologies behind either a party or a person they're electing. And that's the danger. You know, lollies come and go. Monetary incentives come and go, right? Particularly when a nation is in debt. But the ideological impacts are not only detrimental, but they're far-reaching generationally. And that's what I think we're forgetting here.
Okay. You did touch on a very, very interesting point. One that I want to talk to you about is the slander side of things, the attacking and all that sort of stuff. Did you ever, on a personal level, especially with the attacking, not from the Labor Party, but from within the Liberal Party itself, did you ever expect your own attacks to your own personal self? Did you ever expect them to be that vicious and that toxic?
We live in an age where the cancel culture exists. And unfortunately, I thought it was sanctioned to the left. What I found out was it's not. Cancel culture is alive and well, even amongst, you know, what I thought were friends. I've campaigned for the Liberals for the last 14 years, you know, being party member and ran so many campaigns. But look, what was important to them, unfortunately, was an image that they were trying to portray, one that was not necessarily who they were. So compromising on that identity at all costs, and that means taking people down, and unfortunately it doesn't work because hopefully people can see that there is no integrity in that, and hopefully people are drawn to integrity and you know, things that last a bit longer than we're going to cancel you because you said something we didn't like.
Okay. You said something very interesting there. So the political party is not focusing on who they are. Is it time, like, especially with Donald Trump attacking CNN, Fox News and all that, calling them fake media, is the Liberal Party fake conservatives?
Yes.
I honestly think that...
Absolutely correct.
They don't know who they are anymore. I honestly do. Look, there are great conservative Liberals still in the party who know what they're about, who know who they are.
Name them.
They're so rare. They're rare jewels. That's the
Dennis
issue.
Jensen.
He's not around anymore. Gee whiz.
He was on the show a couple of weeks ago.
So who are they? I think they're going through a real struggle of redefinition. It's almost like they're going through their angsty teenage years. You know, the teenage dirtbag.
They're rebelling against their mum and dad.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's Australian people. We don't care about you no more. Was that a good impersonation? No. Okay.
Hopeless.
And the worst bit is it's live, so I can't, like, take it back. Sorry.
Keep moving forward.
So identity is very much built into the fibre of either an organisation, but it comes through leadership. It's expressed through, you know, what we focus on. If the leader has a vision and they focus on that vision, bring people along with them. But I haven't seen that kind of inspirational leadership. You know, some of my, you know, heroes of politics, Martin Luther King Jr. and Wilberforce, abolishing slavery, you know, abolishing racial tensions. These were great men who had great purpose with great vision. Why don't we have people like that in our society anymore? Why don't we have great political leaders that we can aspire to anymore? And I think at the heart of it is we forget who we are in politics. We forget that we are influencing societies and nations and affecting people's lives, and we have a great responsibility.
Do you think if these people came along in today's world, they'd just be cancelled? I reckon there's a good chance.
That's a very great question.
Because anybody who comes up with an opinion which is not mainstream, you are done. You're terminated, right? I mean, that just seems with someone comes up with a big opinion. You know, we want to do this, we want to do that, and then newspapers don't like it. Ooh, gone. You have no coverage.
Yeah,
you don't exist.
I agree with you, Charles. But the problem with that is the mainstream stuff is often not true. What we're told in mainstream media, and even what our universities teach our young students, it's not the entire truth. It has deep agenda to it. So we're not asking questions enough as a society. You know, we're not asking the deeper questions. We really need a disruption of the institutions and structures in our society that
Correct. I mean,
uphold this corruption. It really is.
I mean, I've been saying now and again, you know, the university sector in particular needs like a royal commission into it, because it's just hopeless what they're doing in our universities. You know, graduates doing these bullshit degrees, they're worthless, and they're coming out and they're still semi-literate. I mean,
but more to that,
what is going on?
They're not taught to think for themselves. They're taught what to think, which is extremely problematic, because the moment we stop being thinking for ourselves, it's got dictatorship all over it. And that is the problem we have with the results for this Western Australian election. Where is democracy? Where is true opposition? Where is accountability in our parliament today? If Labor want to pass any legislation, they can, with impunity. So where is our democracy? Is dictatorship dead in Western Australia?
You've said some things there that I really, really like. And there's a lot of people, and I can see the phone going crazy. So the producer's jumped on board and he's trying to have a look at that. So a friend of mine is a dean of a university. Now, because of the community radio standards, we can't say that he works at Sheridan College. So there's colleges out there where they are... I'll probably get in trouble for that, but anyway. So there are universities out there. You don't have to go to the major universities like Murdoch or University of WA to have your kids brainwashed. So there are colleges out there that you can get a really, really good education out there without fear of this sort of thing. So for the people out there, if you are interested in finding these real places, please look us up, send us a message. We're more than happy to send the details through.
I'm a lecturer at that institute in law and business, by the way.
Yeah, I know. That's why I put the bit of a plug in there for you. So the Dean, Augusto Zimmerman, a former Law Reform Commissioner of WA. Well, I've been trying to get him in here for ages, but lectures just... the line times don't match up. So maybe during school holidays, or is it called school holidays out the uni?
University breaks.
Study breaks. So hopefully during the study breaks we can get him in. But lovely guy, absolutely awesome. Got a lot of time for Augusto. And he's actually got a new book out. So
another one.
Get it. Another one.
Yep.
All right, DJ Carly. Another one.
It's on COVID.
I know.
Really? Wow, I never knew. So I've got that book actually, and it's a really, really good read. I forget what it's called though, because the thing is, it's not just Augusto that wrote it. There was a whole heap of different authors into it, so it's really entertaining. It's one of those books where you generally have to have like a dictionary with you as well, because some of the words in there are absolutely massive, and it's I think I've learned like 5 or 6 different words I had no idea the meanings of. So anyway, no, I'm not in university.
Did you go to university?
No. Mum was smart. She got me a trade.
Fair enough.
I didn't end up with like $1 million university debt, and it still worked. So, but yeah, no. So we have come up to the 20-minute mark, so we do need to go to another message. I really, really want to talk about the void that's been left over by the Liberal Party. And you said a comment about there's no real leaders left over. I want to find out, do you think there's anyone out, or whether it's WA-based or federally based, people in the Liberal Party who have the ability to be that inspiring leader? So I'll give you a break to have a think about it, and when we come back, we'll let us know. And for the people out there, 0418 897 897, send a text message in if you got any questions. So we will be back, and Dwayne, the producer, has asked me to tell his really, really bad Zachary joke. So I will tell that live on air when we get back.
Oh, the suspense is killing us.
I can see your eyebrow twitching, and you're like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. And yes, it will be embarrassing. So, Carter's Corner, Travis Carter, Honourable and very Honourable Charles Smith, and Andrea Tokaji. Do I have to call you Professor?
Ooh, very soon.
Very soon. Yeah. Okay, so let me know when you are. So we'll be back shortly.
The following program may contain coarse language. Listener discretion is advised.
It is possible to stop using drugs.
We can help.
Call Narcotics Anonymous 1300 652 820.
Or look us up on the web, na.org.au.
Sit back, relax, and fasten your seatbelt. Joining the dots will take you to the edge of the universe.
Listen, learn, discover or rediscover, but most of all enjoy an eclectic mix on Joining the Dots. Saturday from 9 to midnight. Only on 89.7.
Does your internet blow more than the Frio Doctor? Download slower than merging on the Mitchell? Connection more up and down than a gym buff at Jacob's Ladder? Say goodbye to buffering and hello to Pentinet's Perth-powered internet. We're bringing Perth's internet up to speed because we live here too. For super fast, reliable fixed wireless, NBN and LBN fibre internet, get online now with Pentinet, your local Perth internet provider. Head to pentinet.com.au and check your address to see if you qualify.
Proud station sponsor.
Carter's Corner back again. Travis Carter, Andrea Tokaji. Do we still call you an independent candidate for Baldivis?
Well, technically the election's over, so I'm no longer a candidate. You can just call me legal academic, really. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you plan to run again?
Look, the first time I ran was 2008, and I joke about it taking me 10 years to get over the trauma of the first.
So we'll go for 20.
No. I'll be fine next year, I reckon.
Well, the cool thing is you've already started building your team, so it's a lot easier. You lose that first 4 weeks building your team's already done.
It was so amazing. I couldn't believe it. In 6 weeks, I don't know, like over 45 people just rallied around this concept, really. It was amazing.
People are pissed off with the 2 majors. And yes, I can say that. We're after at 6 p.m. So anyway, Travis Carter, Carter's Corner, Andrea Tokaji, legal scholar?
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so getting into it. Now, I did make a promise. Charles had to leave the building. His time was done. He stuck around for a long time. And if you're wondering why I'm stalling, because I really don't want to tell the producer's joke. So everyone out there in social media land, I apologise in advance. This is not mine. This is Worst Joke Tuesday all the way. This is
Why
worse
do
than,
it then?
Because
Why?
I promised him, and I'm a man. If I promise I'll do something, if I remember, I'll do it.
Right.
So it's about Zach Kirkup. So he was a little bit depressed, a little bit upset after the election, and he's like, oh, why didn't anyone vote for me? And in the interest of business, Lunar New Year's just gone, he decided to go to a fortune teller. And so he goes down into the area where the fortune tellers are.
This is a joke, by the way.
It is. This is not true. This is just a joke. Please don't take it as truth or gospel. He might have. I don't know. I'm not stalking him. Anyway, so he goes down to the fortune teller, and the fortune teller goes, how can I help you? And he goes, why did no one vote for me? Like, I had all my policies. They were great policies. Why didn't anyone vote for me? And the fortune teller goes, show me your policies and I'll have a look. And so he showed me the policies and he's like, yes. I see the problem here. He's like, tell me, why did I lose? I need some closure. And he goes, you have Zachary disease. And he's like, huh? And he goes, your policy, they're exactly like the Greens.
Zachary disease.
Did you like that one? Was it terrible?
I actually did.
It's so terrible. Like, the producer is jumping up and down. He's loving it.
As Shakespeare said in King Lear, the truest things are often said in jest.
Okay, the only Shakespeare I read was Macbeth. so the Scottish play.
No, it's all good.
All right, we actually have quite a few messages coming through. Let me just catch up for a minute here. So whilst I have a quick read, the question I put to some of the other guys was, do you think the Liberal Party will survive? And you were talking about some of your political heroes or the people you look up to, very inspirational leaders who did amazing things.
Absolutely.
Do you think, and both locally, so WA-based Liberals, you know what, let's throw it out to other parties as well. Do you think there's a leader out there that is so awe-inspiring that they could repair the damages that Kirkup's done to the Liberal Party?
I think more to the point, there's been a global disruption to every economy in the world. There has been a global disruption to every political structure in the world. So along with that disruption is an opportunity to be innovative and creative. We've seen this in business recently, right? There are disruptive technologies being produced every day, right? So we get rid of the old because we're using the new concepts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same in politics. We cannot do politics the way we've always done it. And we cannot have the same kind of political leaders that we've always had, because it is a new era. And a new kind of leader is required. What does that look like? I think we don't quite know yet. We won't know until we see it. I think we'll know until we see it. And no, it's not arrogance and pride, Mr. Pointing at yourself.
I was going for the 5 o'clock shadow and really old glasses, but anyway, hey.
So I think it is time for humility and servant leadership. Leadership like history has never seen before, but in Jesus Christ. Because we are disrupting the status quo of greed and corruption and selfishness and self-indulgence and pride and power, and shall I go on? Hasn't that what politics has been full of through generations? And people are sick of it because it only works so far. You know, that's why we've got greed in the world. That's why we've got poverty and need. So we need to stop it.
Is it time then just to totally scrap the Liberal Party in WA and start from scratch?
I think
with a more encompassing party.
I know for certain that Liberal Party executives will be in a boardroom somewhere, even now, even tonight, strategizing, regrouping, looking at the numbers, trying to figure out why, and trying to almost re-identify themselves. Who were we? Who are we into the future?
Now, message to all the Liberal boards out there. So once you do decide that, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to have you on the show. We've never declined anyone to come on the show yet. We've had to delay a few. I think we had to delay your interviews a few times as well. But so far, we have never declined anyone from being able to be on the show. So to Liberals, you know what? Let's throw it out to Kirkup. We have been critical of Kirkup. I think the mainstream media are going to absolutely slam him on this one. They're going to put the entire blame onto him. In the interest of fairness, I think the only fair thing is to give Kirkup the chance to put his side of the story forward. Why did he push that policy for such a green policy? Was it on the instructions of someone else? What was the plan going to this election? And let's be fair, he picked up probably an unwinnable position even before he took the leadership. We did make on an earlier show the statement that we think that Kirkup might be a throwaway leader. And I hate to say it, the more and more this is looking at, I think Kirkup actually got thrown under the bus.
I think so too.
Yeah, whether a lot of that was his own doing, I'm not sure. So, to Mr. Kirkup, Zach, I'm happy to have you on the show so you get a chance to actually put your own statement forward.
To be fair, Zach Kirkup is a wonderful person. You know, think about everything that he's been put through. How would you have handled it? He has handled it with true grace. You know, he has held up this election in incredible ways, right? Despite, you know, he was vulnerable with us all about his insecurities and flaws and whatever else. And despite all those things, you know, he handled his position. And how much did he know that he was elected as leader just to take
to take
one for the team. I'm
I
not sure.
I have to give him credit, and he said it himself. He has suffered with depression in the past. So with someone who has suffered depression like that in the past, to be able to do that, get slammed as he has, and to come out on the other side,
It's not easy, let me tell you.
I have to give him credit for that. So credit where credit's due. He's doing well. Okay, we do have some messages coming through. A nice person in the wrong party should have been in the Greens.
Yeah, look, and that's fair. I think, as we all know, Zach Kirkup was someone who aspired to politics from a very early age, 15, 16. He handed Prime Minister John Howard a business card, introduced himself, "Hi, Prime Minister, Zach Kirkup, future Prime Minister of Australia." He was not shy about that fact. So I think this whole process would have hurt him a lot. And to be honest, I don't think he should pull out of politics altogether. Sure, have a break. He's still young. He can return, in 10 years.
Can he? Is there too much damage done? Is the brand Kirkup too damaged?
No, I don't think so. I think that people can be forgiving. And look, I mean, it depends how he goes about it. And with the Liberal Party, you definitely have to earn your stripes. They are a party that want you to work hard, prove yourself. They want you to prove your character, and that you're in it for the right reasons. And I experienced that. And I think it's a good thing to have, but it can also create a toxic culture where there's a lot of competitiveness, and particularly, the position he was put in. I think, it was a really, he was between a rock and a hard place. And why he proposed those policies, it would have been a combination of the advice he was getting. So Chief of Staff, Nathan Honduras, to, their policy teams, to, those on the outside. So they would have had relationship and conversations with those industries and professionals.
Okay.
And look.
So let's throw another question out there then. So Kirkup could have been, I don't want to say a puppet because he is the leader of the Liberal Party at the time. Could he have made all his decisions based on extremely bad advice from people who should know better? And then could it be argued that they were intentionally doing that to start removing different people from within the party, intentionally throwing them under the bus? They knew the election was lost anyway. Could that have been the case?
Yeah, I've actually thought of that myself, to be honest, because it all seemed too strategic. And if that's not the case, then it's a scary happen chance. Do you know what I mean? The alternative is that they didn't think about it enough. Yeah. So I, obviously, as an academic, I think about things deeply. So I would rather err on the side of they thought about it and it was with intent rather than they didn't think about it.
Yep. And then the other scary thing is, let's say they didn't think about it and this is what they did. Let's imagine they totally fluked it and they won and they became the people leading this state. Did you want people that were so poorly thought out on their decisions? Did you want that sort of people running in the state? So could this actually be kind of a blessing in disguise, that the Labor may actually be all right, and that there's Liberal parties that in their disorganised shambles would have been an absolute worst disaster for the state?
I think you're absolutely right. What this election is doing is separating the wheat from the chaff. So who's a true Liberal? Who doesn't belong in the party? What is the party's identity? What is the alternative? And look, there is space and room for an alternative to arise and a strong leader to take that alternative party to victory. Because, again, the two-party preferred system no longer works. People are recognising that. And they're systemically dangerous to our economy, and our social development, insofar as the toxicity of the power-driven, the lobby-driven agendas, attached to these two parties because of their history and the rest of it, relationship kind of connections. So you almost need kind of a, fresh party, fresh perspective, a leader who's not only charismatic but understands, how to navigate these waters for the best interests of the community, because we live in such a different world these days. Politics isn't what it used to be.
Yep, 100% agree with you. I think the next
especially the next 6 months. I think that's going to be a very large selling point for the next, even the federal election, because by that time that's over, there's a very good chance we'll be out of election within the next following 6 months. The polls are going to be super interesting. So News Corp, add us to your list. Please send us your polls. We're having a few issues getting on their mailing list. But you know what? This has been quite an entertaining show. I wasn't sure how it would go because this is my first time I've had to do a debrief for an election. The local council election for Perth City doesn't really count. So this was our first real election for Carter's Corner. Super looking forward to the federal election. If I had to get you to have a guess, how do you think the federal election will go? Do you think Liberals will be able to have a good showing, or do you think there's going to be another sea of red?
Despite all the dramas that have occurred recently in federal parliament, I think that the Liberals will survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they've retained the favour of the people because they have retained a balance between ruling this nation and engaging in that democratic process. So, for example, yes, we had JobKeeper, JobSeeker going during COVID, but they also talked to the people about what the options were, how they're moving forward. I think Prime Minister Scott Morrison, you know, was very good at communicating those things. And I'm comparing him to people like Tony Abbott. For example, Tony Abbott was a great leader and a great mind, but he failed to communicate, you know, and to take people on that journey of decision making. Whereas I think Prime Minister Scott Morrison does that very well. So he opens a conversation up publicly and he tells people what he's doing and why he's doing it. And it's like bringing people along that journey with them so they feel more comfortable with it. Whereas a leader like Abbott was like, this is what we're doing, it's done. And people like, say what?
Okay, fair call, fair call. Okay, so we are wrapping up for time. We're now a minute over, too bad. So I'm going to throw it out to you. Any final thoughts? Like, how do you feel with the state election? Plans for moving forward? The floor's yours. Go to town.
I think the next 4 years will be a challenge for Western Australia because we do not have strong opposition in Parliament. We are at risk of losing our democracy. This is the time for each individual to actually exercise their political freedom, political speech, and to engage in the democratic process as much as possible. Because now more than ever before, the Labor Party can pass any legislation with impunity. And we need to be the gatekeepers. We need to be the watchman on the wall because Liberals just aren't that in Parliament anymore. So it's incumbent upon all of us to buy into that process, not to be afraid of politics, not to be, you know, disheartened or complacent, but to engage because it's our freedom on the line.
Spot on. So one thing I do want to add to that is most politicians, they're not these big scary animals. They're everyday people like you and me. They might just have a law degree or they've got a business behind them or something like that. So they are everyday people. They have their fears and the things they like and all that sort of stuff. So as Australian citizens, as West Australians, if your politician starts doing things you don't like, give their office a call, send them an email, write them a letter, hound the absolute, and sorry about my language, hound the shit out of them because we don't have that opposition. We don't have the Liberal Party to do it now. So us as a society are the ones that need to do it now.
Correct.
And trust me, once they start seeing they're getting hounded and they're being trash talked by their voters, they'll very rapidly start listening. So, yeah, power in numbers to the people. Yes, let's go.
Politics is about the people.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be about power.
And they should be out learning to listen to us rather than dictating to us.
That's right.
All right, fantastic. So this has been Carter's Corner. Andrea Tokaji. Again, I always have it's always fun talking to you because you challenge me not only on the mental side of things, but it's just always fun. So thank you very much for coming in again. It was very, very late. So thank you for coming in. Carter's Corner every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. plus some. So this has been streamed live on the YouTube. So the YouTube channel has now been rebranded. So you don't have to look up Travis Carter anymore. Just look up Carter's Corner on the old YouTube. It comes up. Nice bright blue logo. Also on the Facebook. And we're looking for more sites to stream to. So if you do have any Facebook pages and you'd like the show to be streamed directly to your page, please let us know. Send us an email and we'll be able to get it all linked up and sent through to your page as well. So awesome.
So
Thanks
good to hang out.
Yeah, you can come back anytime you want, Andrea. So, okay, we're out of here. We've got a message that was supposed to be played 5 minutes ago, and then we'll go into some music before the final shows. So we'll talk soon. And I hope you enjoyed the Australian content. Cheers.
If you're not happy with your current property manager, then check out Exceed Real Estate. Exceed's experienced team are reliable, authentic, and will take responsibility for your investment property as if it was their own. They'll soothe all your investment stress. Find out why stations